Chapter 491, Omniscient Author's Viewpoint 5. That was Kim Dok-ya. That sentence, it definitely came from him. She didn't need to hear his voice to know that. Han Soo-young wrote the next sentence. What's this, you were all right. Being an author didn't mean you were in control of every word you write. And also, she was the type of person who could only write stuff like that. However, Kim Dok-ya should be able to read that fine, because he was the greatest reader she knew. Knock. Along with a slight knocking noise, she heard his laughter. Sounds of weapons clashing coming from everywhere hurt her ears. Her companions were still bitterly fighting. No time to leisurely waste time, in other words. You knew this would happen from the get-go, didn't you? She couldn't clearly see the sentence written on the wall. As if the communication earlier was just a pure fluke of really low odds. Hey you, write legibly will ya? Even though Jang Ha-young was helping out here, Kim Dok-ya's message still couldn't be seen. Wall of impossible communication is unleashing its power. Tsu-jut-jut. Far too many sentences were aimlessly floating above the wall. Every single one of them happened to be what she and the rest of the companions said to Kim Dok-ya. Some of them were clear to see, while some were indistinct. Soo-young-ah. I know. While listening to Jang Ha-young's voice, Han Soo-young reached out to the wall one more time. She tried really hard to find Kim Dok-ya's message by combining the floating sentences. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has begun its storytelling. Target is an existence you can't understand. What connected each letter was context. Letters cast out in the sea without context were akin to a book that had been created to be unreadable. I'm going home now. You'll lend me a spare battery when we go camping. All she could do now was to connect those contextless sentences somehow. Inject context into these nonsensical sentences to give them meaning. Shuffle those that weren't plot development so that they looked like it. However, it was not enough. No matter how she connected them, there would always be some part without meaning. Kim Dok-ya, say something. What is the plan? Just what do you want us to do here? No reply came back to her. The roaring outer god king was still battling the constellations. The heavily bleeding companions were collapsing within the storm of aftermaths. Han Soo-young gritted her teeth. It was fine if Kim Dok-ya didn't want to say it. The important part was reading his intentions of making such a move without letting his companions know of his plans. It was to figure out his thought process on choosing to become the outer god king. It was then words began gathering one by one. If the ways of survival was behind a paywall, just how much have I used it so far? If I had 20 million in my bank account, what would I feel? If there are 2 rooms, then how does the remaining one get filled up usually? If I had met you back in the normal world, I would never ever have become your friend. Those words seemed randomly thrown out like a memo. She still collected those words and sentences anyway. An excellent writer had to be an excellent reader first, and Han Soo-young knew a way to read such things. How does one go about making money? One had to accept that sometimes you'll run into a sentence you can't comprehend yet and flip the page over, just so that, one day, you'd able to read that sentence when you did return to the very same page later. Target is an existence you can't understand. There was no choice but to desperately flip the pages over and over again, and then some more, to gather as many clues on those impossible sentences. Doesn't my life have money-making probability or something? Tsuja-chachu. She saw Jiang Hui-1 kneeling down in the distance. Yi-hwa ran over and supported her, while Yu Sang-ah and Yi Hyun-seong blocked the weapons flying in her direction. Bureau's probability is restricting your interference in the scenario. Kim Dok-ya was right. Probability was to blame for everything. The reason why he was poor, why they ended up in this state. Bureau's probability is confining your body. Tsu-jut-jut. Probability in this world was basically power. The scenario would flow towards those possessing more plausible probability. Your nebula has violated far too much probability. Han Soo-young knew that. This storm of aftermath was the reward for overcoming many dangerous situations through sheer luck. They had so many companions, yet none were lost on their way to the final scenario. On the other hand, other incarnations had to sacrifice so much more trying to get this far. Why only they? This is unfair. Do you know how hard we had to struggle to get this far? Kim Dokya Company had violated far too much probability. No one was sacrificed when one was needed, or more correctly, only one person got continuously sacrificed. Kim Dokya. He died multiple times and got resurrected again. He even revived someone that should have died, while using the revival attribute or even visiting the underworld and going so far as to alter the future. And that's why Kim Dokya had to become the enemy of the story. Because all the great fables Kim Dokya Company had compiled didn't have enough probability. Han Soo-young grasped at the sentences as if she was scratching the wall. It was then a new sentence suddenly floated up. For the time being, you take over the nebula's safe. This was a conversation she had with Kim Dokya not too long ago. What's this? I might end up spending it all, you know. She received the authority to manage the safe via the system. She wondered what possessed Mr. Miser Kim Dokya to do this. Back then, she figured that he was simply too lazy to manage the finances and dumped the job on her shoulders instead. Would you like to confirm the current balance? However, would that Kim Dokya really hand over the safe to someone else with that reasoning? As if she had been entranced, Han Soo-young opened the safe. Wow, you saved up a lot, haven't you? What a miserly guy you are. What are you planning to do by saving up this much, though? They have their uses. There was a humongous amount of coins saved up in the safe. More than enough treasure to tempt any star was hidden inside there. And this was the most basic currency of sponsorship and the power source to move the scenario. One of the most powerful fables in this world is coins. However, there weren't all that many things one could do with coins now, whether that was reinforcing the incarnation bodies or purchasing stuff from the Dakibai bundle. That's why she was quite curious. What was the point of so obsessively hoarding all these coins? Will you spend these coins for the growth of the great fable? And then Han Soo-young finally realized that very reason. I will. Nebula's cash of 143,245,199 coins will be paid to the probability. Kugagagugu. The moment her declaration came to an end, fables rushed in like wild predators lusting after fresh meat. Entrancing golden light blanketed the companions. Great fable, demon world spring, is greedily gorging on the coin's fable. Great fable torch that swallowed the myth's figure is ballooning up. Great fable season of light and darkness's contrast is getting even clearer. The great fables would grow to possess even more power by devouring the available funds. The fable's details would be realized more faithfully, viscerally, and also more colorfully. Kugagagugu. When the strengths of the great fables began resisting the Bureau's probability, both the great Dakibus and constellations began panicking. Jiang Huiwan's sword grew lighter and lighter, while Yi Hyunseong's shield was getting sturdier and sturdier. Monstrous beasts and insect kings, Shin Yuseung and Yi Gilyong summoned, began tearing into the constellations in the back. Fire! Yi Jaihai's battleship began firing its cannons, and the incarnations in the front lines dissipated without a trace. Unfortunately, their higher odds of victory lasted only for a brief while. Bureau's probability has increased its level of restriction. The jet-black rifts began spreading in the heavens from the excessive usage of the probability. The entire stage for the scenario was shaking unsteadily. Fables began leaking out from the mouths of several great Dakibus. They had bet their lives on this must-win battle. In order to create the conclusion they wanted to see, these Dakibus personally jumped into the scenario and willingly became the part of the story. Tsujajajut. Black Flame Dragon. Powerful black flame wrapped around Han Soo-young. While filtering away attacks coming in at her, more black flames were fired out. Right next to her, Jan Hyung was relying on the Murim's skills to guard her back. Why did Kim Dokya entrust her with this role? There was someone better suited for this job, the protagonist of a certain story. However, Kim Dokya still entrusted this job to her. Jang Hyung's wall was scattering away again. It was going away after exhausting all its powers. The Bureau's restrictions made it harder to even breathe. Kim Dokya, momentarily within reach, grew distant again. The flow of the story was once more going over to the great Dokibus. Han Soo-young cried out. Your black is never-ending story. A story where none would be lost. A story where everyone would live together in a huge house at the end of all the scenarios. The companions were fighting for that simple dream. However, their probability wasn't enough, and that dream couldn't become reality. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is now looking at his own incarnation. It was right then, a light bulb flashed brightly in her head. Not enough probability. The reason why Kim Dokya entrusted this role to Han Soo-young and not Yoo Young-hyuk. Constellation, maritime war god, is looking at incarnation Han Soo-young. Drip, drip. Blood dripped down from her wounded shoulder. Han Soo-young haphazardly wrapped some bandages around the injury and looked up at the sky. There they were, distant stars of Starstream, visible among the storm of sparks raining down. Far, far more constellations than ever before were watching the last moments of this world. Many constellations are dissatisfied with this scenario's development. Quite a number of constellations are criticizing the tyranny of the Bureau and the myth-grade constellations. Han Soo-young suddenly smiled insidiously. That's right, you were all constellations. Kim Dokya should have known this, because he too was a constellation. He was a reader who knew better than anyone on how to make a scenario more entertaining and even tenser than before. And that's why Kim Dokya hadn't said anything to his companions. Han Soo-young clenched her hand tightly. Since she had spent all the coins, she was now literally empty-handed. However, Kim Dokya hadn't just left her with coins only. When the first scenario started, you all said this to us, that we had been living for free, so we should start paying the price for that. What Kim Dokya had left behind was Constellation, bald general of justice, is focusing on incarnation Han Soo-young's words. Constellation, one-eyed Maitreya, is focusing on incarnation Han Soo-young's words. The entirety of their lives lived so far. What you said back then, I'm returning it in full back to you. Along with Han Soo-young's signal, Bu shut the channel off as if she was waiting for that. And then the constellation's channel went dark. Channel by 9158's all broadcast screens have been blocked. Constellation, heavenly wind god, is panicking at the sudden blackout. Constellation, Josian's #1 sorcerer, wishes to see what happens next. After the world had fallen into darkness, the panicky voices of constellations from other scenario locations watching the channel could be heard resounding out. Every subscriber had to go through BU's channel to watch the Kim Dokya Company story. Even those subscribing to other channels had no choice but to see this world through BU, at least at this moment. From now on, our story will be a paid service. Episode 93, Omniscient Author's Viewpoint 5 Fin. Chapter 492, Episode 93, Omniscient Author's Viewpoint 6. The announcement of the paywall brought about a deep silence in the channel. Only Han Soo-young's heavy breathing could be heard within the pitch-black darkness of the stage. If you wish to continue watching this tragedy, what Kim Dokya Company lacked right now was probability. Probability, the thing that made the story flow naturally and in a plausible manner. The set of rules that could only be changed by the gazes of countless constellations and the coins they sponsored. It's time you guys pay too. Only then did she figure out Kim Dokya's plan in its entirety. And because she did, she could say this out aloud now. Selling off the tragedy of his life lived solely for the purpose of saving his companions, just like how his mother did once upon a time. Kim Dokya wanted to change this scenario, by selling the tragedy Kim Dokya Company had created. The absolute majority of constellations are greatly shocked. Han Soo-young's declaration caused the constellations to grow hesitant. She recalled the memories from back when her novel went behind the paywall for the first time ever. Author Nim, it'll start from tomorrow. She felt the exact same emotion back then as today, the feeling of not knowing what would happen in the future. How many people would end up reading my writing? How long would I be able to live on by selling off this story? You stinking Kim Dokya, so you slapped me with this kind of role, is that it? What she needed to do right now wasn't selling some novels. Great Fable, Demon World Spring, wishes to tell the next part of the story. Great Fable, Torch the Swallowed the Myth, wishes to tell the next part of the story. Great Fable, Season of Light and Darkness, wishes to tell the next part of the story. Great Fable, Liberator of the Forgotten Ones, wishes to tell the next part of the story. The words written by Kim Dokya Company's Blood and Tears. What she needed to sell was their life story, fables that she couldn't carelessly change or tell in a jokey manner. Even then, she offered up these fables for sale to the constellations. Bu and her concerned eyes were looking at her from the sky. Han Soo-young smiled as if to say, "Don't worry. There's no one. That's too bad. Things are about to get really interesting from now on." Only she could do this job. Only Han Soo-young, designated as the baddie among Kim Dokya Company, could sell this story. As if to sympathize with her, the movements of the outer god king was getting duller. Maybe he was wallowing in sorrow. How laughable. Who do you think will be interested in your measly little story? The one to shatter this silence was the myth-grade constellation, Poseidon. The figures of other myth-grade constellations could be seen in the distance as well. They were all mocking Han Soo-young. Do you really believe that your fable is worth that much? It was the same with the great Dokubus. They all seemed to be thinking that Han Soo-young's choice was an error in judgment, one made while under the weight of the encroaching end. Sujujajud. Once the constellations left, the channel's size shrunk down. Some channels even tried to butt in using this opportunity. Channels that belonged to Dokubus hostile towards Kim Dokya Company. Finish them. Constellations manning their positions at the back made their moves. They were mostly myth-grade, or those top-ranked fable-grade constellations that almost equaled them in power. Constellation, one responsible for the universe's cycle, is surveying the scenario's battlefield. Constellation, mirror that emits smoke, is incarnating into the scenario's battlefield. Constellation, master of thunder and war, is incarnating into the scenario's battlefield. Indian myths Brahma, Aztec myths Tezcatlipoca, even Slavic myths Perun. The constellations from the different large-scale nebulas that never showed themselves in the lower scenarios until now, their movement alone was fable in itself. And when the great fables began their actions, the flow pressuring the battlefield intensified even more. Gaia Pagaguk. The nameless ones, desperately blocking the constellations approaching Kim Dokya, were blown up indiscriminately. Myth-grade constellations possessed the largest shares of the great fable of each nebula. Once they began moving their probability, the balance of the engagement tilted in their favor in an instant. Han Soo-young watched the incoming wave of the stars and muttered out, "Even in places you didn't bother to look, we managed to eke out a living." The screens might be blacked out, but the sound still continued to be transmitted, and probably her voice was being heard by every constellation in the channel. Han Soo-young also knew not every constellation liked them. Kim Dokya Company had a lot of enemies. Some cheered their fable on, but some others either were jealous of them or in some cases even hated them. At times, malice with no basis could be found too. However, there was one common denominator among that gamut of emotions, and that was the fact that they had been watching a certain fable for a very long time. A story that you spend a very long time with will eventually become a part of you. Just like Kim Dokya and the ways of survival. However, the moment you close your eyes, this story you've been watching will end right here. Her words didn't target any particular listener, meaning it was a declaration aimed at everyone. Eventually, constellations annihilated the front ranks of the outer gods and rushed in. The Kim Dokya Company's companions stepped up to block them. Kwae, a baptism of status in the form of Poseidon's wave with Zeus's lightning added on top, crashed in. Outer gods burning away like meat being grilled by electricity died in their droves. Even those from Kim Dokya Company wouldn't be able to receive that wave with their current body conditions. Even then, Han Soo-young believed in her comrades. Even if I die, I will never stop moving. Han Soo-young fired black flame with every ounce of her energy. However, its power was less than a quarter after being suppressed by the probability. And just as Poseidon's wave reached the front of their nose and began pouncing on them. For a very brief moment there, it felt as if the world came to a standstill. Also, it felt like a fundamental something that created this world seemed to have changed, as if a thin brush was painting over it. And then in the following moment, the frozen world began moving forward again. A fatal error has occurred in the final scenario. Poseidon's wave and Zeus's lightning pounced on her, and Kim Dokya Company. Kwadujujudu. More correctly, pounced on the protective barrier in front of them. It was the sturdy, vast wall of forged steel, which was Yi Hyunseong's fable. His fable that blanketed the entire planet back in Oz was now protecting his companions. But he should still be under the restrictions by the Bureau, so how could he? Soo-young SSI. A terrifying amount of sparks was streaming all over Yi Hyunseong's body, but it wasn't only him. Everyone from Kim Dokya Company, wasting away under the Bureau's restrictions, were now enveloped in the dancing blue-hued sparks. Their once imprisoned muscles regained their freedom, and the arrested magical energy was being freed as well. The error in the channel's donation payout has been normalized. The message entered their ears in the next moment. Delayed donation amounts will now be paid out. BU could be seen crying softly in the air next. At the same time, an incredible amount of indirect messages smacked Han Soo-young in her ear. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, happily donates half of the coins she owns. Just how much was the half of coins amassed by a constellation at the cusp of reaching the myth grade? Han Soo-young couldn't even estimate the amount. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is paying an incredible amount of coins while grumbling unhappily. Constellation, most ancient liberator, is. So many stars began glowing brightly. The nebula's safe started filling up rapidly with wealth. Nebula safe total balance, 83,112,540 C. Nebula safe total balance, 162,423,800 C. Nebula safe total balance, 1,041,512,080 C. The total coins surpassed 100 million in no time, before breaking past a billion mark. That pretty much determined what Han Soo-young should do next, which was to spend every single cent of that donated amount into the probability. Su-judge-judge-judge. Everyone hold on. Constellation, mass production type maker, is grinning brightly. Constellation, mass production type maker, has donated the number of coins that exceeds the upper donation limit. The geezer wearing the pineapple-themed t-shirt. Back when Han Soo-young went to shoot a commercial for the Fair Argini, she had a chance to chat to him for a brief spell. You really think such adverts will sell your car? When Han Soo-young asked, the mass production type maker replied in a somewhat obtuse manner. Not advertising to sell, but advertising the product about to be sold. And now she thought she could understand that answer just a bit. Constellation, Joseon's #1 sorcerer, is donating 5,000 coins. Constellation, Merangong Marquis Yumu, is donating 5,100 coins. Constellation, Father of the Rich Knight, is donating everything in his secret stash. Constellation, Mother of the Darkest Spring, is donating half of the underworld's balance. Constellation, Supreme God of Light, is donating 2,100,000 coins. Constellation, Lily Blooming on Aquarius, is donating 1,500,000 coins. Constellations of Familiar Modifiers. Constellation, Lame Trickster, is donating 15,000 coins. Constellation, Monarch of Small Fries, is donating 450,000 coins. Constellation, Adventurer That Stands Up an Egg, is donating 18,000 coins. Constellation, Master of the Night Ikurayu, is donating 4,000 coins. All the stars in the Big Dipper are donating 300,000 coins. A small constellation from a small planet is donating 300 coins. Constellations that were familiar but not counted on. A great number of constellations staying anonymous have added their strength to the Nebula Kim Dokya Company probability. And finally, even the constellations they didn't know. Every constellation that came along for the ride with Kim Dokya Company, Fable, was now sponsoring their story. Light returned to the One-Starkin channel, and the broadcast began once more. Channel by 9158's broadcast will begin again. The story was starting again. All these coins contain the wills of the constellations. Their desire to see the end of this fable. Han Soo-young too understood this desire. However, there were some who failed to do so. What are you all doing? Could it be that you're sympathizing with those incarnations? With the enemies of the story? Everyone, you must wake up. Have you all forgotten who you are? Oh, dear constellations, don't let your eyes be stolen away by a demeaning story like that. The great Dakibai roared out. That prompted someone to answer back. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, says she's more clear-headed than ever before. Tsujachachu. An incredible storm of probability was pushed back, and Poseidon's wave sunk back to the ground. Han Soo-young slowly closed her eyes. A breeze was blowing in. Will of Starstream accepts the new flow of probability. Something was changing. Starstream is considering an alteration to the scenario's rules. All probability from the Bureau ruthlessly suppressing her, and her companions were dissipating away. The scenario's balance that had been heavily tilted out of equilibrium was regaining itself. You still can't understand enemy of the story. Kim Dokya remained difficult, however. Enemy of the story wishes to be understood by you. However, it wasn't as if nothing had changed. Scenario's rules are changing. From here on, all constellations can choose a camp to side with during the final scenario. Han Soo-young slowly looked around her. The surrounding view began changing, as if a layer of the world had been peeled back. Black, 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 black. Go, fight on, this is our battlefield. A man astride a horse brushed past Han Soo-young's side. Without a doubt, he used to be an outer god only until a second ago, an existence that used to be a nameless one. The strange monsters covered in tentacles and sticky fluids and caused one to feel instinctive fear simply by looking at them. We can win this, do not give up until the end. Their figures were changing. Some changed into people, some into dwarves. They were from all sorts of different species, but regardless of what, they were no longer the existences of unknown. Bayamgak move. This is the final scenario we've been dreaming of. Mark. All those nameless ones now had names in this place. You have sided with the enemy of the story. These beings rushed towards the constellations as dusk fell on the battlefield. They formed ranks and advanced towards the constellations. I shall accompany you. Among them was a man who resembled Yi Hyun-seong, and also a child resembling Shin Yu-seung. Even some that resembled Jiang Hui-won, Yi Gil-yong, and Yi Jai-hai. Not bad, so then, this world line has reached this far. For a brief moment there, Han Soo-young saw a girl who seemed to resemble her, too, and all of them were fighting as the ally of the enemy of the story. Her dazed eyes chased after their backs. Every abandoned world line was converging here. The world that she couldn't express with mere words. The world that the predictive plagiarism couldn't read because it could only be imagined by a reader. This was the world Kim Dak-ya had been dreaming of. Han Soo-young slowly turned around towards the spot where the outer god king was only until a moment ago. And a certain man stood on that very spot where a deep abyss cast by the massive creature's size used to exist. Han Soo-young, what should an extra do in order to garner attention? The white coat revealed itself fleetingly underneath the tattered and torn black coat. You're an extra because no one pays you attention. Han Soo-young staggered towards that spot. Well, there isn't any clear solution. Normally, you grab some attention by sacrificing yourself, or... She walked and walked some more, and eventually reached the front of that man. Or you give them stories of their own. The man quietly stood there and waited for her. Han Soo-young stood up straight in front of Kim Dak-ya. Quite unlike her usual self, she thought she might start crying now. Her vision blurred and couldn't see his face properly. You did well. And Kim Dak-ya was standing there. Episode 93, Omniscient Author's Viewpoint 6 Fin. Chapter 493, Beginning of the End 1. Seeing him smile with such a thick skin, she suddenly felt compelled to hurl several choice words at him. She wanted to say, she'll definitely kill him if he went ahead and did something like this again. Just like how it had been, she really wanted to do that, but Han Soo-young. She couldn't. When she lowered her head, she saw Kim Dak-ya's ankles. The battle-ready formal suit crafted by the mass production type maker was now in tatters. His entire body, having fought constellations as an outer god king earlier, was riddled full with wounds, so much so that it'd not be strange for him to keel over right now. Are you all right? And him worrying about her instead of himself only made Han Soo-young unable to figure out how to digest her current emotions. Constellation, father of the rich night, is looking at you. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is satisfied with your reply. Constellation, maritime war god, is nodding his head. The gazes of the stars shone from the sky. Even though the indirect messages continued to rain down, Han Soo-young's back remained cold. The blacked-out channel of a few moments ago still remained vivid in her mind. If she had made even the slightest mistake, constellations might not have lent their help. Probability might not have flowed in a way she planned. Her companions might not have endured. What had been entrusted to her up until a few moments ago was not some simple manuscript that could be revised at will. This burden of knowing that one misstep would bring down everything they had built up together. Kim Dak-ya had been completing the scenarios while constantly feeling that emotion. He supported Han Soo-young, tottering unsteadily. She was about to slap his hand away, but instead sighed and spoke up. Don't ever make me do that again. Only you could have done this. She bit her lip the moment she heard him. You know better than anyone what the readers want, right? What was the end Kim Dak-ya wanted? What Han Soo-young thought about even when she found herself in a desperate situation of making the whole world her enemy was that very question. And perhaps the current her should be able to reach the answer. Is this the end you've been thinking about? Well, it's the beginning of that end. There were many creatures brushing past them to enter the battlefield. Only until a few moments ago they had been the outer gods, but now they were existences with faces and their own names. Attack them. Those constellation dogs. Some faces they almost recognized, some others they couldn't. Someone resembled Kim Nam-woon, while a face resembling Ye Jai-hai could be seen too. However, they were Kim Nam-woon nor Ye Jai-hai. No, they were simply extras from those stories that ended a while ago. And every single one of these existences was fighting to change this world line's conclusion. Everyone from the abandoned world lines, from the 0th turn to the 1863rd, had gathered here. Go, everyone! Han Soo-young felt emotions swell up in her chest after watching their march. These people gathering here to resist the predetermined conclusion were all Kim Dak-ya Company, allies. Nebula, Kim Dak-ya Company. entire roster has become the enemies of the story. Companions approached them in their unsteady steps. They, too, could finally see Kim Dok-ya's world. Fable, predictive plagiarism, is sharing its understanding with the rest of Kim Dok-ya Company's members. Fable, Savior of the Star, is sharing its thoughts with the rest of Kim Dok-ya Company's members. All the fables were talking to each other now. Companions scanned their surroundings with dazed expressions. They too were witnessing the sight of the horrifying masks covering up the outer gods slipping away. Han Soo-young observed each and every one of her companions before abruptly realizing something. One of them was still nowhere to be seen. Where did that guy disappear to? When she thought about it, she found it really odd. That guy hated the constellations more than anyone out there. That guy, who fought the hardest among the companions, was nowhere to be seen within the battlefield for a while now. Kim Dok-ya promptly answered her. Over there. Why? Han Soo-young hurriedly scanned her surroundings. Kwaboom. An explosion occurred in the front line and thick dust cloud was kicked up. Constellations from Asgard were busy crushing the outer gods. You disgusting bastards. Dozens upon dozens of nameless ones died every time constellations crossed the battlefield. If it was before, this scene would have been one of monsters dying, but now it depicted the deaths of actual persons. Nameless ones lost their arms, their legs were torn off, and their guts were spilled. They couldn't even mount a proper challenge. Most of the outer gods that heeded Kim Dok-ya's call and showed up here were the lower-ranked variety. Although there were a few higher-ranked creatures mixed within, they had already been felled after being subjected to a concentrated barrage of attacks from the myth-grade constellations. Defending against the concerted attacks of the constellations with the remaining forces was impossible. However, something was wrong. Even when there was such an overwhelming difference in combat capability, they were still ably holding on. Upon closer inspection, she realized that there was something at the very front of the outer gods' ranks. Su-jut-jut. Darkish blue sword light swept across the battlefield. Golden afterimages scattered in the air where the sword's trajectory scythed by. Kuak. The head of a constellation stomping on an outer god just now flew away without warning. And then another one. Then yet another one. A pitch-black figure currently bathed in the baptism of spewing fables rather than blood was continuously wielding his sword. Isn't that? She was well aware of the fact that there was a seriously powerful individual among the outer gods fighting out in the furthest front. Initially, she thought that, since this is the final scenario, the really strong ones have come out of the woodwork. This outer god continued to cut down constellations like pieces of papers, its sharp tail wagging this way and that. But now that she took a closer look, that was no tail at all but a pitch-black sword instead. Attribute Iron-Blooded Conquering King is activating. Corpses of constellations formed a mountain, and on top of this very mountain was a throne of blood. The master of this throne was arrogantly looking down on all the stars of the world. This swordsmanship, you Yong-hyuk. Anna Croft gritted her teeth and emitted her sword aura. The greatest incarnation in America, Anna Croft, reputedly strong enough to never lose in a tactical battle. I'm the strongest on the continent. Soon after, Fei Hu's long spear stabbed through the air and flew right in. China's #1 incarnation, Fei Hu, master of one-on-one combat. This will be my first time fighting you. However, I shall emerge victorious nevertheless. And lastly, Ranveer Khan's palms made their move. His palms left behind clear shadows like Kali's hands, while pouring out around 100 or so ripples. Quiet. The battlefield was rocked by yet another loud explosion. Fables continued to tell their stories beyond that explosion noise, however. Fable, comrade of life and death, is continuing on with its storytelling. A portion of fables are being shared due to the special effect of comrade of life and death. Fable, Hellscape of Eternity, is continuing on with its storytelling. While witnessing this spectacle of swords slicing down indiscriminately, and both constellations and outer gods dying with their bellies cut wide open, Han Soo-yong abruptly recalled a certain old question that circulated among the gossipers. Who was the strongest incarnation in the world? Everyone kill that guy. We can break through as long as that man is dead. Now she could answer it without a shred of hesitation. There couldn't be differences in opinion on this one. The world's strongest incarnation was Yu Jung-hyuk. Constellations that had long discarded any semblance of their pride pounced on him. Even though his shoulder split open and his thigh ruptured, Yu Jung-hyuk's expression remained calm as he blocked the Constellation army rushing in at the front lines. Such a battle was only possible because he had regained a portion of his past memories. However, there was one thing she still couldn't figure it out. Incarnation Yu Jung-hyuk is currently the enemy of the story. How can that guy be the first? How did Yu Jung-hyuk join Kim Dok-ya even before Han Soo-yong or the rest of the companions could? Yu Jung-hyuk's battlefield was steadily being pushed back after the myth-grade constellations pitched in. The closer he got, the more visible the murky aura of chaos surrounding him became. It was the power of chaos usually seen from the outer gods. Yu Jung-hyuk had become one with secretive plotter once upon a time. Only then she understood it, the reason why he could become Kim Dok-ya's ally faster than everyone else. Han Soo-yong immediately flew off her handle. You sons of bitches, not even saying a single thing to me. Yu Jung-hyuk was well aware of Kim Dok-ya's intention. Sometimes, rage would be accompanied by deep understanding. This tragedy could only be established when the characters deceived each other. Because Yu Jung-hyuk hated constellations more than anyone, he was able to read Kim Dok-ya's intentions, and that was how he could make his move without hesitation. That was the only way to hide the fact that this was simply a story from the constellations watching on. Pa-chud-chud. Yu Jung-hyuk had arrived in their vicinity before long. He sheathed his sword and spoke up. It'll be hard to continue defending like this. He looked back with disinterested eyes, only to meet Han Soo-yong's glare. He opened his mouth first. You were late. Shut the hell up. Three of them lined up side by side. Yu Jung-hyuk's dark heavenly demon sword roared out a keen, vicious cry, while Kim Dok-ya's pair of black wings spread wide open as if to protect the two people next to him. Han Soo-yong clenched and unfurled her fist currently enveloped in black flame and spoke up. I can't figure out why this feels like it's been a really long time. Their companions finally reached their rear. Dok-yo SSI, Soo-yong SSI. Hyung. Yeonseong knelt down and protected everyone with his shield, while Jiang Hui-won stood next to him and held her sword upright. The chimera dragon carrying Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong roared out. Yu Sang-a's lotus pedestal spun around and surrounded the companions' sides. And lastly, Yi Jai-hai's battleship protected the sky above them. Load the cannons. Cannons were shoring up their strength at the ends of the vessel. Gong Pil-du established his fortress atop the battleship and aimed his own cannons at the ground as if to imply that he could take care of everything here. Every star and nebula Kim Dok-ya Company is shining brightly. Bu was shining like a blue sun amidst the dancing sparks. She was sweating profusely while receiving the coins pouring in the Kim Dok-ya Company's direction. Probability gleaming richly was now giving them blessings. Kim Dok-ya then spoke to his quiet companions manning his sides. Everyone thank you. Their expressions faintly trembled when he said that. Jiang Hui-won bit down on her lip, while Yi Hyun-seong wiped tears welling up in his eyes. Han Soo-yong could feel it. From the start, Kim Dok-ya didn't plan on sacrificing himself. Maybe he had thought about it over and over again, the way to make everyone happy at the end of this world. He should know fully about the wound his companions suffered when he sacrificed himself, and then he must have foreseen the destruction they might suffer as the price for fighting together. And that was why he chose this scenario. A scenario that changed scenarios, a scenario that didn't stick to the predetermined conclusion, a scenario where everyone could reach the end together. Han Soo-young thought that it'd be nice for this story to end right here. Every emotion permeating within the words got transmitted vividly. She felt as if she now knew what Kim Dok-ya was thinking about and what he truly wanted here. Only after reaching the end of everything did he finally open up his heart. And that was precisely why Han Soo-young thought that things must not end here. Let's talk about that later. Jang Ha-young opened her mouth first, and everyone fights your heart's content. I won't let anyone die. YCLHWA ended the conversation. Here they come. The march of the constellations commenced once more. Do not panic. Their numbers have grown a little bit, that's all. They are nothing more than a small nebula. The story that couldn't find its bearing continued to flow within the rapidly changing scenario. Han Soo-young swung her fist, black flame, shooting out from her knuckles pierced through the heads of the incarnations. Yu Young-hyok's breaking the sky swordsmanship deflected both Anna Croft's and Fei Hu's blades, while Jang Ha-young's breaking the sky force punch shoved away the group of constellations trying to rush in from the side. Hour of Judgment is activating. Jiang Huiwan's hellfire burned away the stars rushing in from the front, and Yi Hyunseong's forged steel shield blocked the unseen weapons cutting through the air. Everyone get down. Yi Jai-hai's turtle ship finished loading its cannons and began spitting flames out. Along with blinding flashes of explosions, the enemies in the frontlands were swept away. Bring down that ship first. Incarnations waiting for their chance all leapt up into the sky. That prompted Gong Pildu's turrets to spit out fire and noise as well. Quack! You pathetic fools! A handful of constellations used the falling incarnations as their footholds to fly up. They flew up higher than the turtle ship and began firing their charged-up magical attacks. Die! Even before the constellation could finish its words, its body was torn apart in half. The chimera dragon roared out and ripped the constellation's body to pieces with its massive maw. Hayoung behind you. Yi Gil-young's locusts stopped the constellations trying to fly in. The companions advanced forward bit by bit. Just like the time they had tread so far, they inched forward on the road where the starlight couldn't reach. Han Soo-young began thinking. In the eyes of other constellations, they must have looked like monsters trying to destroy this world. However, that didn't matter because that was the more exciting alternative after all. Kim Dok-ya destroy that ark. They could see the ark beyond the constellations rushing in like storm clouds to protect it. And even now, more constellations were rushing out from the hull of the broken ark. They were actually stars asleep within the ark, waiting to depart from this world line. Enemy of the story is approaching the ark. Enemy of the story will destroy all fables in this world. That ark had to be destroyed in order to end the influx of the constellations. Hurry! Collision of probability has caused the rapid change to the scenario. Starstream has begun revising the final scenario's condition. But then there were certain constellations standing before the ark. Constellation, one responsible for the universe's cycle, is intervening in the battlefield. Constellation, mirror that emits smoke, is intervening in the scenario. Constellation, master of thunder and war, is intervening in the scenario. These myth-grade constellations had been observing the unfolding situation until now. Only by defeating them could the ark be within reach. Each individual combat power was more than enough, but they still lost out in the overall combat force. Constellation, spear that draws the borders in the oceans, is greatly enraged. Poseidon and Zeus, busy slaughtering the nameless ones, out by the frontlines joined in, leaving the companions stuck in a boxed-in position. Kodujijudo. Yu Young-hyok watched the spear slice past the ocean of corpses and return to its wielder and spat out venomously. Poseidon. Even if this was Kim Dok-ya company, they still wouldn't be able to cope with these enemies all at once. There was some leeway still left to be found on the expressions of the great Dokubus. Han Soo-young was angry. They possessed this much probability, yet why couldn't they surpass those creatures? She cried out, "Hey, when will our own constellations show up?" Those that were supposed to come hadn't appeared yet. Uriel, her own sponsor, the underworld's couple, and... But then Kim Dok-ya asked back, "Does it have to be constellations, though?" "What was that?" Kim Dok-ya grinned. Han Soo-young really detested that smile. "It isn't just the constellations that can participate in this battle now, because there's enough probability here thanks to a certain someone, you see." At that moment, Han Soo-young felt the back of her neck grow cold. The enormous amount of probability that had been injected to Kim Dok-ya Company was suddenly emptying out at once. Something that could only be summoned after using up that much probability was arriving here. The existences that all constellations feared. The licks of flames belonging to the conflagration burned on the ground. A sun that burned away the fable of eternity was rising up from the east. No star would dare to compare itself to her brightness, the living flame. And on the opposite side of the burning, screaming stars, a pure blue ocean was crashing in. A tsunami wave flooded in from the west as the sunken island rose up once more. The calamity of the Western world, master of the sunken island. Quack. Constellations got swept away by the wave and dissolved away as sacks of fables in an instant. Soon afterwards, the northern skies grew jet black, and constellations there began crashing to the ground like falling raindrops. The ruler of the northern universe, monarch of the great, the outer god king, smiled as he began bursting the heads of the stars like a rampaging hooligan. And the existence incarnating into Yi Hyun-seong blocked the storm of aftermaths they had created. The king of silver light heart, the ruler of the interstellar space in the south. And then an existence approached them from a place of nothing. With every step he took, the gigantic heaven-shaking sword clawed the night sky and brought down many stars shining up there. "It's been a while, Poseidon." It was a man with the exact same face as Yu Young-hyuk, replete with a long scar on the cheek, too. The secretive plotter nonchalantly strode over and grabbed Poseidon by the latter's neck, before grinning brightly. "This will be my 26th time killing you." Episode 94, Beginning of the End 1 Fin. Chapter 494, Episode 94, Beginning of the End 2. I thought that it had finally happened when I became the outer god king. You have become the enemy of the story. This wouldn't be my first time experiencing the sensation of fable in my entire body shattering into tiny little pieces. A similar thing happened back when I was booted out of the scenario and fell in the story's horizon. If there was one thing different between then and now, it would be me not getting expelled from the scenario even after becoming an altered existence. No, it was the exact opposite. You have become the boss monster of the last scenario. You will be alone forever. No one will understand you in this worldview. I memorized the loneliness I felt in that moment. This feeling of being cast away all alone in this universe. The feeling of becoming a monster that no one could understand for all eternity. However, this also wasn't my first time experiencing such a feeling either. "I'm XX Times reporter. Do you have some time to speak with me?" It's him, the son of the murderer. That was why I needed to take up this role. Only I could perform it to its fullest, after all. That was the price to pay for reading the story called Ways of Survival to its conclusion. Your companions will never understand your decision. The secretive plotter told me that as if he already knew what my plan was, and I understood why he had no choice but to say those words. We'll find out later, won't we? Neither he nor I were wrong, just that the fables we compiled were different, that's all. Quack 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 quack. The tsunami wave of fables unfolded right before my eyes, and the blinding sparks of probability spread out above this wave. And on top of them all, the gazes from the constellations were streaming in. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is watching your fable. Constellation, father of the rich night, is watching your fable. Constellation, mass production type maker, is watching your fable. This wasn't a gamble that I alone could realize. Me becoming an outer god king was merely the beginning of the final pages. Yu Yonghyuk fought hard, my companions held on bravely, and Han Suyong gamely attracted the constellations. And the constellations, believing in us, made their choices. The plan was a success. The living flame that rises up from the east. The master of the sunken island, the calamity of the world in the west. The monarch of the great abyss, the ruler of the northern universe. The king of silver light heart, the ruler of the interstellar space in the south. And finally, the great plotter that crawls from the place of nothing. The scenario's volume began expanding rapidly with the gathering of all 5 kings. Historical figure-grade constellations failed to deal with their combined statuses and began vomiting out fables on their knees. These kings had been excluded from the scenario until now. After escaping from the reaches of the hounds chasing after the abyss through the abundant probability, they had personally descended to the scenario. The secretive plotter was looking in my direction. I nodded my head in return. And now it was time for their stage to open. Yu. Several terror-stricken constellations forgot their stations and began hastily running away. The monarch of the great abyss grabbed the nape of one of those constellations. The 999th turn's Kim Nam-woon began laughing. Now, you leaving so soon makes it a wee bit troublesome. It only just began after all. He must have recovered some of his energy through the probabilities overflow. He glanced at me and muttered out. And you don't get ahead of yourself. We didn't come here to help you out. But then the king of Silver Light Heart stood next to me and spoke up. We came to aid you. I know, thanks. As expected, Yi Hyunseong remained a trustworthy person regardless of the number of regressions he lived. The master of the sunken island, 999th turns Yi Jai-hai, also made her move. Fable-grade constellations hurriedly rushed in from both sides and tried to block them somehow, but it was a waste of time. To the island it's moving. From the front of the island covered in verdant moss, silvery cannons shone brightly. The biggest warship in the world line, the perfected turtle dragon, spat out flames towards the rest of the world. Qualia. The overwhelming spectacle of an entire corner of the battlefield being blowing away without a trace caused me, Han Suyong, and even Yu Yonghyuk to become utterly dazed. And at the furthest front of the battlefield, 2 kings were facing off against the myth-grade constellations. 2 people who fought together a really long time ago were there. The 999th turn's Uriel was wrapped around in the Hellfire's corona, and the other was Yu Yonghyuk, who had survived the 1863 hellscapes to eventually become an outer god. In that moment, Kim Dokya recalled a certain ancient battlefield. It was from Yu Yonghyuk's 999th turn. Yu Yonghyuk and Uriel entrusted their backs to each other and fought together during the Great War against constellations. Yu Yonghyuk, blind in both eyes and roaring out, and Uriel protecting him. It was one of the scenes that I loved the most from the entirety of the Ways of Survival. And that scene was being reenacted right before my eyes. Fable, battlefield of a hero in flame, is waking up from its prolonged slumber. A fable that had disappeared a really long time ago was now connecting the 2 kings. I shall leave Olympus to you. The 999th turn's Uriel spread open her wings wide first. Just as she unleashed her status, constellations pounced on her as if they were waiting for that moment. They were the top constellations from Papyrus and Vedas, as well as some other lower-ranked constellations that fought against us in the Demon King selection, the last pharaoh, and the bird that eats the thunder. Fable Flame of Annihilation has begun its storytelling. The moment the 999th turn's Uriel wielded her sword, the first lines of the historical figure-grade constellations rushing in at her turned into powder and scattered away. Incarnations with pale complexions hurriedly turned around to run, while fable-grade constellations shouted out venomously. Stop that sword, stop her from swinging it no matter what. Uriel's sword carved out a burning path, and the secretive plotter ran on it. It felt as if the history of the universe flowed within every step he took. His steps seemed neither too fast nor too slow, yet no one dared to stop him. Fable, Hellscape of Eternity, has begun its storytelling. The most dreadful fable in all of the world lines began telling its story. Great Fable, Pilgrim of the Lonely Apocalypse, has begun its storytelling. Everywhere his foot landed resounded with the cries of a destroyed world. The original sin of the world stuck to him like a shadow and continued to chase after him. No constellation could stand in his way, and no fable could save him. Didn't matter whether one was an enemy or an ally. As long as one was a constellation, one couldn't help but get seduced by his story. When I abruptly regained my wits from that vast sorrow stained in wonderment, he was already grabbing at Poseidon's neck. The latter managed to recover himself in time as well, and hurriedly shoved the secretive plotter's hand away, all the while unleashing his own status. Constellation, spear that draws the borders in the oceans, is greatly enraged. Olympus' great fable began making its move. Poseidon's Triana bared its fangs while enveloped in a powerful fable. This was the might of a myth-grade constellation that anyone should quake in fear from. However, I too was a myth-grade now, and I was perceiving his actions differently. Poseidon is terrified. His spear uselessly cut through the air, and it was no longer as sharp as before. It was a mistake unbecoming of an arrogant constellation, and Zeus next to him roared out in alarm. However, it was too late by then. Sleus. Something cut Poseidon's torso down, and on his chest covered in blue scales, the lengthy and black wound could be seen. From this wound, great fables began flooding out non-stop. Kyohi woke. Poseidon tried to press down on his chest, while swinging his Triana all over the place. The spear that drew the borders in the oceans, wherever his Triana drew a line, that place would become an ocean. However, such a thing didn't happen this time. For the first time ever, the spear's blade that feared no one couldn't find what to aim at and simply trembled helplessly. The place where his ocean couldn't reach. Both of Poseidon's eyes were soon dyed in the pitch-black abyss. Most likely, he was watching the darkest fable known in this world right now. The one about the outer space, where both the ground and the sky held no meaning as effects of gravity didn't reach there. A complete devastation with not one precious thing remaining after everything was destroyed. And the master of that devastation was looking up at the Olympus' constellations. Doesn't matter which world line it is, you don't seem to change at all. He didn't sound sad. If anything, he sounded relieved actually. Along with the cold metallic noise, the blades of the heaven-shaking sword extended out to the night sky. Shut your mouth. Poseidon managed to beat back the fear and hurriedly swung his Triana once more. But in that exact moment, the heaven-shaking sword also made its move as well. I remembered seeing Yu Young-hyuk use a similar skill to that once before. It was a skill to cut down the stars designed by a transcender who had surpassed his own limit through incredible dedication and hard work. However, something felt different, that attack as if it was a sword technique created so that one man could face off against the entire world. Breaking the sky swordsmanship. Transcending the inner mysteries. The universe slash. Only then did it hit home. The power the secretive plotter displayed back then, during the Battle of Journey to the West, was only a portion of what he could produce. This sword trajectory was the most beautiful I had ever seen. His blade caused the world to split apart. Quadujujudu. The sword strike cracked apart a nebula in its entirety and scattered stardust away. And at the end of that magic-like rays of light was Poseidon, along with Pugagak. Noise, his arm and leg got cut off simultaneously. Poseidon. Zeus freaked out and shouted loudly. Fables exploding forth from the secretive plotter were swallowing up the battlefield. The emptiness he felt while living through the scenarios was expanding. Tsuchachajajat. Poseidon vomited out fables and fell on his knees, prompting the Olympus' 12 gods to rush in. Ares and Hephaestus roared out and swung their sword and hammer. Unfortunately for them, however, they were smacked away by the heaven-shaking sword's blade like a bunch of children. Zeus yelled out in pure anger, "Oh, the great schemer, do not get too full of yourself. You haven't even witnessed a fragment of the myth that created Olympus yet." Even as he was saying that, Zeus's figure was beating a hasty retreat. It was so obvious. The ark was waiting in the direction he was heading to. "Father," the Olympus' constellations abandoned by him spewed out fables from their whole bodies as the nameless ones gnawed on them. Dionysus carried a resentful expression as he roared in anger towards his father. I quietly stared at those constellations before speaking to Han Soo-yong and Yu Young-hyuk. "We need to stop Zeus." Inside of the ark Zeus headed to was filled with sleeping great fables, not just belonging to Olympus but countless other myths as well. If we let him be, this scenario would become disadvantageous for us once more. We quickly began running with everything we had on the stage, currently covered in fables from the dead stars and gods. Han Soo-yong, meanwhile, muttered in a puzzled voice, "By the way, that guy." After cutting Poseidon down, the secretive plotter was just standing around, dazedly looking up in a certain direction. I shifted my head towards where he was staring at. The reason why he didn't chase after Zeus was simple. From the beginning, his purpose wasn't the annihilation of Olympus, nor the destruction of the ark itself. No, what he stared at was a certain something located much, much further away. The final wall. Endless pages were flipping within his eyes as if he was utterly determined to see what was beyond that thing this time. Starstream's probability is experiencing a rapid change. Great Docubus began shouting out at the unexpected distortion of the probability. "Hang on, this is. Oh, the most ancient dream, this." Due to the star stream, rapid change, the scenario content has been revised. Clear condition for the applicable scenario will change depending on the camp you have chosen to side with. I confirmed the revised scenario detail. Main scenario 99, black. For the first time ever, the title of the main scenario was gone. A scenario that had never happened before. A scenario that not even the great Docubus heard of had begun. Type main. Difficulty. Clear condition. Please destroy the ark and put a stop to great Docubus' plan. I heard the freaked-out voices of the great Docubus next. With this, they were about to pay the price for giving up on being the storytellers to become characters in this world. Also, the facade surrounding us began changing as well, as if the world had finally permitted our existence. "It's you." The clearly astonished Asuka Ren was looking at me. It seemed that even she could now see my true appearance, at least faintly. As the sparks wildly danced about, the creatures of fear and disgust, outer gods, were revealing their true appearances. They were no longer the beings outside of the scenario. The absolute majority of the constellations are watching your fable. The scenario we had created was now being officially birthed into this world. Most ancient dream is now looking at your existence. Quite likely, the secretive plotter also heard these messages. More specifically, the messages popping up before my eyes. Reward Final Wall. Episode 94, Beginning of the End 2 Fin. Chapter 495, Episode 94, Beginning of the End 3. Hyung, it says that the reward is the final wall. Yi Gil-yong, catching up to us, spoke in a puzzled voice. However, I too had no idea about this. The reward was the final wall. I wasn't sure of what that vague description could mean. Was us reaching the final wall the reward itself, or after the scenario ended, we'd be given the ownership of the wall? Besides, could someone even claim ownership of the concept of the wall in the first place? Nothing was certain at the current juncture, but it was a certainty that we'd reach the truth of this world when this scenario comes to an end. Please go ahead. Under the 999th turns Yi Hyun-seong's protection, the comrades ran forward. As for the constellations trying to chase us down, the secretive plotter and the other outer gods blocked them. The ark was right before us. Destroying it would take us to the end of all scenarios. Stop them! Starlight descended from the night sky once more. It was shocking to see that there were so many stars left still. It was also hard to tell just where these constellations had been hiding all this time. It's the outer god king, kill him. Constellations pointed their weapons at me and jumped in. Even though they lived like puppets of large nebulas and never truly cleared scenarios until now, they still managed to acquire the qualifications to enter the final scenario. Surprisingly enough, some of them were either former or the current subscribers of my channel. Ones that donated something every now and then to urge me on, ones that desired powerful sources of cider and asked me for more stimulating plot development. And now they were standing against me. Kill him. A few of my companions seemed to be surprised by their hostility towards us. Han Soo-young couldn't hold it back in and opened her mouth. You guys still hadn't exited yet. What popped up in my head just then was the words the guardian of the mandala said to me back in the Isle of Reincarnators. No matter how shoddy a story is, an existence hearing and watching it for a long time will grow to love it. Back then, I didn't understand what he meant by that. I only thought that the guardian of the mandala saw the tragedy of the scenario called Great War of Saints and Demons in such a light, that's all. However, after I mulled over it some more, I realized that that statement probably didn't only apply to the Great War. The constellations originating from Japan and fought against us during Peaceland were incarnating before our eyes one by one. I even saw the 8 pieces of fire Kagutsucha and controller of high and low tides, the water dragon Ryujin. The one confronting them among our companions was the protector of the skis. Incarnation, Yijai, is unleashing her status. Constellation, maritime war god, is unleashing his status. Along with the sensation of a boundless ocean spreading out, the surrounding stage was submerged in abundant status. The opponents may be fable-grade constellations, but the current Yijai would never be pushed around by them. However, she didn't fire away and took a look in my direction instead. Ajasi. I too knew why she was hesitating like this. Go, if you can't be of any use, then go and blow yourselves up. Constellations were pushing the backs of the incarnations forward. These incarnations from the Japanese side, their eyes blank, staggered towards us. Just before we could unsheath our weapons, someone cried out from a nearby location. Everyone, please wake up. Please, you must take a good look at who you're trying to fight against. That was a voice I definitely recognized. Izumi is dead, and Hiroshi also died. Just how many more must die before we all wake up? Have you all forgotten the tragedy back in the Peaceland? It was Asuka Ren. Incarnation, Asuka Ren, has become the enemy of the story. Surprisingly enough, she had already chosen to side with us. Incarnation, Asuka Ren's attribute mangaka is activating. Her sword moved like a pen. The moment her attribute came to life, fables of not just me but the surrounding nameless ones began shifting. Our broken fables, the scattered phrases, were being woven into a single piece of footage. When I thought about it, it wasn't just Han Soo-young who possessed author-type attributes. Although different in some ways, Asuka Ren's attribute was also rather similar in other ways to hers. Please stop this. You know who these people are. You yearned to be more like these people, didn't you? That was the beginning. Incarnations half-controlled by their sponsors were about to attack us, but then began dropping their weapons one by one. With terror-stricken expressions, they either plopped down on the ground or cried out in sorrow. Do this. I can't do this anymore. Incarnations knelt down and muttered out while holding their heads. Meanwhile, the constellations were exposed to danger in an instant after their puppets stopped listening to their commands. They hurriedly shouted out, Get up, hurry. Incarnations understood the pain of fellow incarnations very well, meaning They were different from the constellations that fell into the dime-a-dozen villainous roles after carrying out the scenarios for far too long. Jihaya. Even before I could finish, the turtle ship fired its cannons. Quiet. The group of the constellations were swept away as the percussion noises resounded out. Some managed to endure, though, and soon collided with my companions. A faint light leaked out from the hull of the Ark. We couldn't afford to let more myth-grade constellations wake up from their slumber within the vessel. Fortunately, our advancing speed was not slow at all. Yu Yonghyok's breaking the sky swordsmanship and Han Soo-young's black flame continued to assist me from the side, and we made good headway. If there was one thing tugging at my mind, it'd be the probability. Tsujajachu. The probability created out of the coins donated by the constellations. I looked up to find Biyu controlling the channel with a pained grimace on her face. It hadn't been that long since she hatched as a dakibai, so it was taking a lot out of her to exchange that many coins into probability. Fables began dripping out from her lips now. We're almost there. The unexpected event happened at the same time as Han Soo-young's voice resounded out. The Bureau is exercising the authority to restrict the channel by 9158. Tsu-cha-cha-cha-cha. At that moment my heart grew cold. Originally, individual channels belonged to each dakibai. However, the system called channel was a power founded upon the great fable in the Bureau's possession. The Bureau is restricting the coin donation to the channel by 9158. Suddenly, my movements became sluggish. It was the same for my companions. The tailwind pushing us from the back was swiftly changing into the headwind instead. In the distance, I spotted the 10 great dakibus raising their hands together at the heavens. Those stinking sons of bitches. It seemed that Han Soo-young had realized what was going on here. Balliet. Biyu let out a painful cry as if she got electrocuted and fell from the sky. Yu Sang-a dashed out way before I could and carefully caught the small falling figure. Constellation, father of the rich knight, is protesting against the cowardly action of the Bureau, and Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is greatly enraged by the unfair treatment from the Bureau, and Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is shouting out, "Those black square TTY dakibai sons of bit black square s should." Our channel was breaking down. The great dakibai Garing spoke up. "Your fable cannot be permitted. We simply cannot present such a fable to the most ancient dream." I failed to understand it. They had already become a part of the scenario, so they would be met with an incredible storm of aftermath simply by trying to exercise the Bureau's great fable. Horong Naksu, we shall remember your sacrifices. 2 great dakibus were being extinguished in the middle of the sky. Debris of fable were falling off from Garing's figure as well. I felt a chill run down my whole body. Only now did I realize how determined those damnable great dakibus were. Starstream's probability is going through another rapid change. The number of nameless ones flooding the surroundings rapidly declined. Their faces, back to their original selves through the grace of the probability, were reverting back to the heads of the monsters once more. Hounds are coming. Along with the secretive plotter's declaration, all the kings from the 999th turns gathered in the center. Those needing to exhaust an inordinate amount of probability would invariably suffer greatly from the suspension of the donation. The hounds chasing after the abyss appeared amidst the incoming storm of aftermath and began biting into the king's legs and arms. "Hey, it freaking hurts, you sons of bitches." The 999th turn's Kim Nam-woon roared out. Meanwhile, Yu Yong-hyo cut down the constellations rushing in at us and shouted out, "Kim Dak-ya." I looked up to the sky. The atmosphere up there was suspicious. This change wasn't as simple as a myth-grade constellation controlling the weather. Something incredibly horrific that I had never experienced before was about to unfold here. Ansi Hyach, thank you for all your hard work until now. 2 more great dakibus were being extinguished now. Great dakibus were trying to end their story in this place. Hair rose up on my arms. I had never felt fear on this level during my time carrying out the scenario. Oh, the most ancient dream. The sky was opening up. I took a closer look before realizing that it actually wasn't the sky, but the wall, the final wall, that surrounded the entire universe. And now, something was crossing over the gap in the wall, resembling a torn page. In that moment, Kim Dak-ya intuitively foresaw the destruction of this world. My vocabulary was not good enough to adequately describe what that was. Just what was that? It was like seeing a shoddy doodling drawn by a child and his pencil. That thing was at once a gigantic sword, maybe a spear, or maybe even a missile. What I knew for certain, though, was that an unknown something was falling in this direction. Sujajajachu. For the briefest moment there, I thought I saw something like someone, hand within the gap where that formless mass fell out from. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is. And now only one thing was for certain: getting hit by that would kill us all. Kim Dak-ya unleashed all of his status. Every great fable in my possession began their storytelling simultaneously. I quickly looked back at my companions. Everyone we. And right next second, my vision was dyed in pure white as a massive explosion of probability blew up before our eyes. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Baehyung quietly stared at the great Dakibus melting into the scenario one by one. Storytellers were becoming a part of the last scenario. As he stood there watching, both big and small lower-ranked Dakibus quickly rushed around him. Baehyung Nim, just what is the meaning of? The bureau that had been maintaining a neutral stance until now began changing the entire aspect of the scenario through force. As a consequence, the topography of the bureau was changing. The storages that contained fables all broke down at the same time, and those infamous constellations currently under arrest by the bureau's security force were being freed as well. Baehyung stared at a certain constellation right in the middle of this chaotic scene. The fool who never thought of himself as the protagonist. It had been the same story from the moment they first met. Even with a physical stat totaling less than 10, this guy didn't cower against a Dakibai like him. This guy, he often smiled to imply that he had plenty of leeway, and often carelessly got himself killed too. The fool who knew the next part of the fable even better than himself, the storyteller. Thanks to this guy's fable, Baehyung got to grow his channel faster than anyone, and got to enjoy favorable assessments every time ranking evaluation came around. His fable was now facing an end. Quack-quack-quack-quack. Having become a great Dakibai, Baehyung could now tell what that heaven-splitting thing was. That thing had come from beyond the wall. That was the fragment of immeasurable delusion flying in from beyond the wall that divided this world, the wall that was both the first and the final. The ark could be seen now getting ready to soar. It seemed that the remaining great Dakibus were planning to board the ark and escape from here. Meanwhile, this stage would be annihilated with the descent of that fragment. In that moment, Dakibai Baehyung made up his mind. The remaining great Dakibus, gathered in one place to perform the ceremony, realized Baehyung's intention and cried out. The first one to grab him was Baram. Baehyung, what do you think you're doing? Baehyung didn't reply and stared at the ground below. The ones he'd been watching until now were down there. Incarnations he sent his clone to speak with, and now they were in the same place as he was. Baehyung looked at his own hands. His palms that used to be so small back then were now as big as a grown adult male's. I've been observing that fable for a very long time. Their first encounter wasn't all that positive. One of them was the culprit selling the tragedies called the scenarios, while the other had no choice but to carry those scenarios out while risking his life. That was why Baehyung had to make a move now. He had to do this one thing, since he had opened this tragic stage with his own two hands. This action had to be done if he wanted to remain as the storyteller right until the end. Baram, you told me that there will come a time for every Dakibai to choose their own, one single fable. You must listen to me, Baehyung. You're wrong this time. That fable isn't right. That fable it's. Baehyung let go of Baram's hands and smiled. He knew of a guy who always smirked just before dying. He couldn't understand it before, but now he thought he could figure it out. That guy must have been feeling this way too. It's likely that I have grown to love that story. Baehyung then unleashed his own status towards the Bureau's great Dakibus. Pagurguk, the Horn of Garang, working as the representative of the great Dakibus and abusing the Bureau's powers of interference, broke off. The probability controlled by the Bureau scattered away in an instant, and a ripple effect suddenly occurred. That storm of aftermaths came back to Baehyung in full. He turned around to leave while vomiting out his fable that was changed to a pitch-black color. Baehyung, you dare to. More specifically, he stood in the way of the delusion's fragment falling towards the ground. All the fables he had recorded until now began crying. Every constellation watching this storyteller added their own probability to his action. Baehyung began thinking as horrifying pain of the aftermath storm tore into his body. The protagonist of the fable he had been reading wouldn't welcome his actions at all, because that dude wanted to save everyone's life. Even then, there was a certain rule that you couldn't go against. There is no story where no one was sacrificed. To protect the story, to guard the probability, and to become the one single fable, reaching the final wall, this action had to be performed. Dakibai Baehyung had finally decided on his full stop. The Pasu Sut, noise of something being pierced, could be heard next. He looked back, and for a second there, he thought he saw Kim Dokya's face. Your black is sacrifice. Episode 94, Beginning of the End 3 Fin. Chapter 496, Beginning of the End 4. The moment that dark, sinister, irregular mass exploded in the sky, I grabbed the kids nearby and went down flat on the ground. Yihyeonseong spread out his steel wall, and the rough screeching metallic noises coming from above assaulted our ears. How long passed by like that? Both the sounds and sensation of touch all disappeared. Transmission has been completed. And then a puzzling message entered my head. Muscles in my entire body ached as if I had been beaten up. Yihyeonseong's defensive barrier covering the sky was also gone, too. What on earth happened here? I couldn't properly understand the current situation. Scanning my vicinity revealed the fact that I was all alone. Not the kids I had been shielding, Yihyeonseong and Jiang Hui-won enveloping us, even Yu Younghyuk leaping into the air to wield his sword. None of them could be seen. What I could see, though, was a wide-open plain. I looked behind to discover a dense forest with trees reaching high into the heavens, and opposite it, a land filled with stinking sulfur. Great Dakibus exercised the Bureau's powers and interfered with the scenario. I could clearly remember that much. After that, the Bureau began restricting our coin donations, and realizing that that wasn't enough, they even summoned a strange missile-like thing, too. And then after that, can you hear me now? Well, dearie me, I ended up working extra because the Korean patch wasn't installed yet. I felt this chilling sensation and quickly took a look around. A fable could be heard coming from somewhere, and it was something I was intimately familiar with. This is not a film shoot. Something else popped up in the air right after that. It was a small shadow covering the sky the moment that dark, sinister summoned thing exploded. I hurriedly scanned my surroundings. This isn't a dream, it's not a novel, nor is it reality that you people used to know. You get it now. So everyone, shut your mouths and listen to me. Definitely nearby. He was somewhere nearby for sure. Just how long did I wander around this plain for? Eventually, I spotted him collapsed on the field of reeds. Baehyung. I carefully picked him up. He used to be as big as a grown adult male after becoming a great Dakibai, but now he had shrunken back down to the size of a baby. Just like on the first day that I met him. Baehyung. The starting point of all my tragedies. If I hadn't met this guy, I'd have probably remained as a regular contracted worker for Mino Soft even now. Hold on, Are you saying that you want to sign the stream contract with me? If I hadn't signed the damn contract with this guy, I'd not have been able to come this far. Crumbs of fable fell from Bihyung's body. Their falling speed got progressively faster and faster. Just what have you contributed to the Kim Dokya Company's fable? Why are you shamelessly involving yourselves in their coin compensations? Aren't you fed up with such a story by now? For how long are you going to seek out fables that conform only to the Bureau's standards? Bihyung's fables that I didn't know of were crumbling away. I shook him again, trying to wake him up. I even resorted to smacking him in his cheeks, too. That prompted a frail voice to enter my ears. That hurts. I'm beginning to pity Bowel you smacked around back then. Bihyung opened his eyes and smiled bitterly. He spoke not in the true voice, but in a trembling, faltering, regular voice. It was Dakibai Bihyung's real voice, heard for the first time after such a long while. A voice that I hated. This bastard was responsible for turning people into incarnations and spreading scenarios everywhere, changing this world into a kingdom of voyeurism. And that was precisely why I had to ask him. Why did you save me? The reason why Bihyung ended up in this state was because he touched the probability he shouldn't have. Just like those great Dakibus being extinguished after forcibly interfering with the scenario, Bihyung too ended up in this miserable state by jumping headlong into the aftermath storm he couldn't handle. Bihyung would die in this place. Fables I possessed began trembling. This wasn't my plan. This wasn't the fable I longed for. The fourth wall is violently shaking. Instead of a reply, Bihyung vomited out a mouthful of pitch-black fable. His body was getting smaller and smaller. I'd like to sit up for a minute. I helped Bihyung up. The flights of stars could be seen in the cold night sky. Stars that went along this way and that according to the flow of the scenario. The flow of the distant stream of stars. Bihyung was staring at the star stream. I've transferred all of your companions, and the majority of the constellations, as well as the incarnations near you, should have survived as well. This place is safe from the external shocks. You'll soon figure out the details yourself. You're a smart cookie after all. Several stars were falling in the sky. While I searched for words to say, the number of falling stars gradually increased. Stars were dying in the distant context of constellations. Bihyung should have lived his life while dreaming the dreams of those stars. Kim Dokya, you and I aren't comrades. He must have enjoyed the stars' fables and must have watched their tragicomedies together. He must have witnessed the deaths of countless stars. And on one hand, you are an incarnation of the scenario, and I'm just a storyteller. He must have thought that those deaths looked quite beautiful. It was true that I hated Bihyung. I tried so hard to stoke the flames of that emotion. Fable, king of a kingless world, is looking at its storyteller. Fable, one who opposes the miracle, grieves for its storyteller. Fable, one who hunted the king of disasters, mourns for its storyteller. My fables scattered like fatting screams and spoke to Bihyung. He chuckled, with a proud face no less. I actually wanted to witness your fable till its end, though. Beyond the skis he was looking at was the final wall, the dream Bihyung had been dreaming, the place where the king of all scenarios, the Dakibai king, resided. I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask if he really was giving up here, ask him if he had forgotten about the promise we made back then. Dakibai Bihyung, sign the contract with me. If you do, I shall make you the king of all Dakibus. I still hadn't fulfilled that promise yet. He was the first reader of the fable Kim Dokya had compiled. My hands grew lighter. I slowly lowered my head, but Bihyung wasn't there anymore. As befitting a damn storyteller, he made sure to leave behind his story even as he died. I staggered back up to my feet. He wanted to create a fable where no one had to be sacrificed. Your great epic has encountered an opportunity to change. Blood seeped out from my tightly clenched fists. All of my fables were wailing out. They screamed toward Starstream and at the final wall. This story hasn't ended yet, Kim Dokya. That was the dead Bihyung's fable talking. The fable he left behind moments before his death circled around me and was exhausting its own paragraphs. Bihyung was dead, yet the fable he left behind was still alive. I somehow managed to get a grip on myself. Bihyung was right. The end I wanted to see had only just begun. I needed to find out where he had sent me and where my companions had ended up in. And then, Tsu-chud-chud. The probability sparks were raining down in the middle of skis above the vast plains, and the scenes of the outside faintly revealed themselves beyond the storm of sparks. The devastated stage of the final pages, the battlefield I was in only a few moments ago, was now filled to the brim with corpses of unmoving constellations and incarnations. The moment I saw that, I figured out where I was. Welcome to the final arc. This was inside of the ship I was supposed to destroy. The final arc is currently in the middle of the takeoff procedure. Final scenario has been revised. Main scenario 99, black, 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 black. Type main. Difficulty. Clear condition. Destroy the fable core that powers the arc and stop the world line migration plan of the great Dakibus and Mythgrade constellations. Time limit 24 hours. Reward final wall. Failure destruction of the world line. So that's how it was. If this was indeed inside the ship called Final Arc, then it made sense to see such a world hiding within the craft. This place I was standing in, it was the land of the beginning where countless myths were born, the myths that were currently asleep inside this very arc. Kugugagugu. Rough vibration could be felt coming from the opposite side of this land. Something was approaching here. Run Kim Dakya. The existences that recovered their original powers while carrying their worldviews on their backs. The Mythgrade constellations were flooding in this way. The arc is a type of a great fable weapon. In order to completely wreck the arc, you must destroy the fable core deep inside it somewhere. I read the fable Bihyung had left behind while running within the interior of the arc. You have currently infiltrated the residential cabin D-21. The influence of another myth is far too strong within the applicable area. Your nebula's members can't be contacted currently. Maybe the abnormally higher influence of another great fable was to blame, because I couldn't get in touch with my companions. Fortunately enough, though, one other person from my group had been transferred into the same cabin as me. The influence of the same nebula can be felt strongly. Kim Dakya. Just before I reached out and said something, Han Soo-young shouted out first. Shut up and run, don't come this way. The thicket behind her was cleanly sliced through right then. Something was chasing after her. She hurriedly yanked an item out from her inner pocket and threw that thing behind her, which was a smoke grenade. Mass production SSS-grade smoke grenade is activating its effects. For next 20 seconds, the surrounding field of vision will be screened off. While the constellations falling into confusion raised a noisy ruckus, we hurriedly escaped from the thickets. Han Soo-young seemed to have finished analyzing the situation by now, too. Did that guy die? I didn't reply. The heavily panting Han Soo-young spat on the ground. That stinking Dakibai bastard, how could he even call this his final parting gift? Indeed, could anyone even call this a gift at all? I looked up at the arc ceiling. There should be countless owners of great fables besides us still sleeping inside this ship. Kim Dakya. According to Bihyung's fable, the fable core is at the center of the arc. We should be near its front section. The moment I finished saying that, the true voices of constellations rang out from the rising smoke screen. After them. They are still nearby. We can't head to the next world line with them. Han Soo-young used the midday tryst to speak to me. Should we just kill them all? That was an option, sure. However, the current battlefield wasn't ideal. This part of the cabin was actually another nebula's worldview, meaning their own stage transformation was active in this location. The residential cabin D-21 is the location of the universe tree Yggdrasil's roots. Han Soo-young frowned deeply. Son of a gun, why did it have to be Asgard? Constellation, god of harp and horn, is performing the requiem of the apocalypse. Constellation, one who lost his arm to the wolf of apocalypse, is searching for his disappeared arm. Constellation, Thursday's thunder, is overly emphasizing his mightiness. Constellations were flying around in the air searching for us. Most of them were fable grade, but since when was Thor that powerful? The Thursday's thunder condensed lightning on Mjolnir and stared at the sky, his eyes now in the shade of eerie blue. Thor was a fable-grade constellation. On this stage, however, he could unleash status rivaling that of Zeus. I addressed Han Soo-young. We need to find a stage that's advantageous to us. Will there be such a thing in this place, though? Unlike them, Kim Dok-ya Company didn't really have anything in particular to call its worldview. There is one. Even then, there should be one stage here where we could fight on equal footing. If my thoughts were correct, that was. If it was that place, then all of our other companions should also be able to exercise their full power too. The problem was with how to get there. Fable, Pebble, and I has begun its storytelling. Of course, there was that method too. Han Soo-young's eyes grew wider. Fable, Pebble, and I is telling the story of We're Just Pebbles. What the heck is this? I grasped her wrist and cautiously stepped in front of the constellations like small pebbles rolling on the ground. As expected, they couldn't locate us at all. Constellation, goddess of love and cats, is forming a depressed expression. Constellation, guardian of the Great Horn Bridge, is searching for someone. Han Soo-young saw all these constellations failing to find us even though we were walking right past them, and her jaw dropped nearly to the floor. This is madness. What kind of dogshit cheat is this? Sure, it was a cheat, all right. At a bare minimum, you wouldn't spot a pebble unless you actually acknowledged the fact that there were some of them lying on the ground. A constellation that likes to change gender is giggling away. It was then a bad premonition entered my head. Even Han Soo-young was making a similar expression to mine. However, we were almost there. Even if Loki had discovered our existences, the main forces of Asgard were far away now, so. Are you thinking of using that same method to escape this time? The fable Pebble and I didn't work on those who had detected the actual form of the fable itself. And unfortunately for us, I had used this fable on a certain someone once before. I slowly turned around to find an eye swirling in crimson light staring at us. Episode 94, Beginning of the End 4, Finn. Chapter 497, Geichin 1. Currently, BY915-8's picture transmission is in a temporary suspended state. BU must have done that voluntarily. It might be because of Bihyung's death, or maybe there was a problem trying to transmit from within the arc itself. Whatever the case might have been, it was a good thing for us. It'd been so much nicer if only the person before our eyes wasn't there, though. Anna Croft. I stared at the prophet's blonde hair fluttering in the wind. I also sensed additional presences within the dense forest. They probably were the squad under her direct supervision, the Zarathustra. Why isn't this pebble or rock or whatever not working on her? I didn't reply to Han Soo-young. Didn't have enough time now to explain everything that happened in the Isle of Reincarnators, anyhow. Rather than patiently wait for my answer, though, Han Soo-young simply gripped my wrist hard. And then she pointed at Anna Croft with her free hand. Vicious licks of black flame danced on the tip of her pointing finger. Move out away or die. Their gazes collided in the air. Eerie, bluish ghostly aura permeated within Han Soo-young's irises as she activated predictive plagiarism. At the same time, the eyes of Anna Croft, wielder of Great Demon's Eye, also swirled in a crimson aura. Faint sparks danced in the air as the gazes of these two capable of reading the future collided. The latter maintained this tense standoff for a bit before opening her mouth. Kim Dok-ya, do you want to escape from this floor? Han Soo-young's complexion changed colors and she growled unhappily. Hey, you ignoring me now. I can help you. Weren't you trying your hardest to kill us not too long ago? As Han Soo-young's words came to an end, I sensed the movements of the constellations in the surroundings. I even noticed a few that began destroying the terrain indiscriminately in order to locate us. It would be hard to buy more time here. I didn't have a choice. If we sided with you back then, we'd all have been wiped away. And the current situation is different how. Are you really going to waste your time this way? I'm pretty sure it's you people feeling the urgency, not me. Do we have a reason to trust you? Are you the type to trust someone even with a good enough reason? In any other circumstances, I'd have gladly accepted her help. However, Anna Croft was someone who signed a direct contract with the whole nebula. You're the Nebula Asgard's incarnation. Nebula, Asgard, great fables are waking up from their ancient slumber. And the current floor just so happened to be the cabin where Asgard's constellations resided. Anna Croft readily admitted to that and nodded her head. True, I'm their incarnation. In that case, don't you find this even more strange? I'm right here looking at you both, yet why haven't they rushed here yet? I too had been keeping an eye on the constellations loitering around our vicinity. It looked as if they couldn't even hear our conversation. Quite likely, she resorted to some kind of an unknown method to block their gazes somehow. What are you scheming? I stared into Anna Croft's deep, mysterious eyes. Exclusive skill, reading comprehension, is activating. More than anyone out there, the incarnation Anna Croft places importance in realistic causes. In a certain sense, this world's most righteous person could be none other than Anna Croft. If Yu Jung-hyuk's cause was built upon rage and hatred, then Anna Croft's was built upon the foundation of righteousness. The survival of the absolute majority. Her aim was to safely preserve the city of her birth, Las Vegas, the United States of America, and on top of that, Earth itself during the hell of scenarios. However, America was destroyed during this world line. Her home vanished on the same day that the Great Apocalypse began. All that remained were the small number of Zarathustras following after her. Even then, her complexion wasn't as gloomy. No, her expression seemed to be filled with a certain fervor instead. It was an expression of a person getting nearer to the world she wanted to see. While feeling the gentle vibration spreading within the entirety of the ship, I opened my mouth. You're thinking of taking over this ark, aren't you? Right then, Han Soo-young next to me gasped out, as if she had reached the same conclusion as me. Anna Croft grinned refreshingly. How wonderful it is that you're so quick on the uptake. It won't be easy to drive out the constellations and take over the ark. However, it is the last chance given to humanity. Her plan was quite clear. The final ark was a great fable weapon designed to transport fable seeds to another world line. If she managed to defeat the constellations and acquire the controlling authority of this ark, then she should be able to transport humanity to a brand new world line. And everything would begin anew in that place. Not one constellation can be left alive, even if that includes you. While listening to her, I recalled an ancient text from the Ways of Survival. Anna Croft's Black is perfect night. A world of darkness where not one starlight shined. Anna Croft wished for humanity to live freely again under that darkness. If it was the world she dreamed of, then my companions should be able to survive as well. I felt slightly lonely as I opened my mouth again. In that case, we'll be temporary allies. We'll work together until we reach the ark's core. Until then, I shall lend you the power of my precognition. Han Soo-young next to me sent a message in my direction. I've been checking her through lie detection, and she hasn't been lying. Doesn't look like she's been using poker face either. I nodded my head. All right, let's work together. While going through the fable Bihyung had left behind, I read the surrounding topography. The exit at the outside of the forested area is towards the branch reaching out to the heavens. One thing I realized while following after Anna Croft was that our current area was not a plain, but a floor above a certain tree. Gotta admit, their worldview setting is pretty slick. Han Soo-young muttered out, evidently impressed by the sight. Seeing such a detailed recreation of Asgard worldview, I began to fully realize just how long they had been preparing this final arc. This shouldn't be the whole universe tree Yggdrasil. It was probably a mock-up. Even then, this tree was more than wide and expansive enough already. Most likely, the Asgard's constellations would live on while enjoying the vested rights founded upon this fable in the next world line. Anna Croft quietly stared at such constellations, before shifting her head away and focused on the way ahead instead. Han Soo-young observed her and spoke to me. By the way, will she be all right? The price of betraying a nebula should be huge, though. Before I could answer, though, Anna Croft opened her mouth first. My situation is not something you should be concerned about. What the hell, you can even eavesdrop on this. I only guessed that you were using midday tryst, since you two haven't said anything for a while. Sounds like you have a trusty backer or something. Han Soo-young's words caused Anna Croft's expression to harden for the first time. What do you mean? I was wondering if it's logically possible for a measly little incarnation to block off the gazes from an entire nebula, that's all. Han Soo-young's right. No incarnation could have pulled that off, regardless of who you were. I quietly glared at the back of Anna Croft's head. Exclusive skill, reading comprehensions, concentration level is rising up even higher. I did have my suspicions. The aura of chaos gently crumbled away behind her, and beyond that I thought I glimpsed a pair of crimson eyes not too dissimilar to Anna Croft. From the get-go, there were only two existences in this world capable of interfering with the channels constellations watched. Kugugugugu. It was right then that lightning suddenly went off in the air. The ground split apart, and the surrounding atmosphere began quaking ominously. The sounds of incoming storm could be heard next. Constellation, one-eyed father, is slowly blinking its remaining eye. Tsujujujut. Anna Croft's complexion paled instantly. Even the god of creation, Ra, we fought back in the 98th scenario, didn't possess might of this caliber. As for the status, it easily exceeded Thor's we encountered earlier by a huge margin. This worldview's most powerful being had just woken up from his slumber, in other words. Odin. We began running. Even if Kim Dokya Company had grown stronger, it was an act of utter stupidity to fight the myth-grade constellation Odin in Asgard's turf. Constellation, one-eyed father, is now looking at his world. A terrifying gaze was sweeping across the entire world, and not too long after that, I felt something was looking at us. It's this way, hurry. There was a tree branch leading up to higher floors of Yggdrasil in the place Anna Croft was pointing at. We quickly ran on that branch, and almost at the same time, the ground beneath our feet lost strength and began collapsing. Faster! I squeezed out every ounce of my energy and ran, and also activated the wind as well. Exclusive skill, Way of the Wind LV, is activating. All the great fables I've collected so far strengthened the Way of the Wind even more, and it added greater momentum to our traveling speed. I wanted to activate Demon King transformation as well and spread out my wings if it was possible, but one of the wings was wounded just before the transmission, and I couldn't do that. Do. Some things was busy chasing us down. Constellation, god of harp and horn, is heeding the father's order. Constellation, goddess of love and cats, is answering the father's order. Constellation, one who lost his arm to the wolf of apocalypse, is howling out. Constellation, guardian of the Great Horn Bridge, has detected someone's presence. We're almost there. Anna Croft turned around while saying that and extended her hands out. Suddenly, the surrounding view changed and the field before her seemed to disappear. It was her speciality, phantom barrier. Constellations got lost in the darkness, suddenly enveloping them, and roared in surprise. Tsujujujut. Anna Croft's eyes became bloodshot before blood trickled down from her mouth and ears. It was the cost of going against her own nebula. Even then, she didn't back down and shouted out. Iris, Selena, lead the allies away. The two people running way ahead of us took Zarathustra's, and ran towards the end of the branch. "Run, hurry, it's right in front of us." Anna Croft went down on one knee while bleeding profusely. She was in no shape to run by herself now. Han Soo-young. Even before I was finished, Han Soo-young picked Anna Croft up and ran. It didn't take too long for us to reach the end of the branch. What waited for us there was a mysterious bridge emitting a rainbow of colors. It's the rainbow bridge leading to other floors, the Bifrost. The fantastical bridge only seen within the myth was now laid out before my eyes. Selena and Iris were already halfway across this very bridge. I decided to activate lightning transformation and cross this thing in one go using the momentum. But then, Quabioom. I thought I saw a light flash in the heavens, and then the center of Bifrost was abruptly cut off. A massive spear that carved up the sky was being summoned back. I instantly recognized what that spear was, the God King Odin's weapon, Gungnir. He chose to eliminate us here by cutting off the bridge leading to another world. I looked back at the group of constellations hot on our heels and bit my lip. We'd definitely be defeated if we choose to fight Odin in this place. Kugugagugu. In the end, the only answer here was to cross the bridge. However, the width of the broken-off section was far too wide, and the storm generated by Odin was madly whipping about in the open gap. Even if I activated both Way of the Wind and Lightning Transformation to their fullest, there was no guarantee of us crossing it safely. Han Soo-young shouted out in frustration, "Hurry, isn't there another way?" She forcibly shook Anna Croft, prompting the latter to reply helplessly while vomiting out blood. My precognition isn't perfect, but this time I saw clearly 4 people crossing this bridge. 4 people. I want to ask for clarification, but she had bled far too much and stopped speaking altogether. But then a certain scene popped up in my head. Kim Dokya began thinking, will it work? However, there was no other path remaining. I looked up to the sky and was greeted by the deluge of indirect messages from the constellations panicking from the channel's sudden upheavals. Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, wishes to see the channel's broadcast. Constellation, King Humu, complains about the channel's blackout. Constellation, bald general of justice, is searching for the disappeared Kim Dokya. BU, start the broadcast. Why are you mad? If we open the channel now, every constellation in the arc would learn of my current location. However, the thing I was planning to do would only work with the channel open. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. Many constellations are surprised by the screen spreading wide open. A portion of constellations realize that you're in danger and are freaking out. A small number of constellations feel an odd sense of déjà vu at the current situation. I knew all too well what that déjà vu the constellations were talking about. A long time ago, there was an event where they had to cross a cut-off bridge. The Deus Ex Machina that activated on the broken Dongho Bridge. The absolute majority of constellations remember the situation from back then. Nebula Kim Dokya companies, great fables are shifting. Along with the gazes from the constellations, the probability began writhing wildly. Stage transformation is activating. Su-cha-cha-cha-chu. Deus Ex Machina is activating. The bridge that the constellations created back then was being recreated right before our eyes. Deus Ex Machina, even-numbered bridge. Description: a bridge of light created by the blessing of a constellation. Only the even number of people can cross it. When an odd number of people try to cross it, the bridge will be extinguished immediately. The even-numbered bridge. Been a really long time since I last heard that name. Han Soo-young, take Anna with you and run. What? Hurry up. I activated Way of the Wind on Han Soo-young and made her cross the bridge forcefully. Hey you, shit, I don't know anymore. I confirmed the distancing back of Han Soo-young before turning around. Constellations had begun emerging from Anna Croft's phantom barrier, one by one already. I unleashed my status towards them while thinking to myself, The even-numbered bridge can only be crossed by an even number of people. The distant hand Soo-young's voice and Odin's enraged roar entered my ear one after the other. I unsheathed the unbreakable faith. I wasn't planning on dying in this place. Anna Croft said 4 people. Just before I was about to unleash the electricity from the lightning transformation on the incoming constellations, a loud explosion occurred at the back of the attacking group. Someone was ramming through the constellations like a tank while running towards this way. It was a familiar fable. There was this one particular guy who got summoned to this floor only about a moment ago. His face revealed itself from beyond the rising murky fog of the fable. Keep running, Kim Dok-ya. The dude busy smacking all the enemies away and smashing the skulls of the constellations was busy dashing in this direction while carrying a scary light in his eyes. I could only grin wryly. I didn't mind anyone else, but would have preferred not crossing the bridge with that guy. Hey, don't you throw me to the river this time, you bastard. Episode 95, Gichin 1 Fin. Chapter 498, Gichin 2. Yu Young-hyuk was running towards the bridge, while Asgard's constellations were chasing after him. The bald general of justice shouted out, "Do your best, descendants." That prompted the one-eyed Maitreya to retort, "Your bald head is caked in sweat. Worry about your own head first. Aren't you going to help them? I don't have an incarnation, so how can I? You can simply incarnate directly. You must have lost your mind after being trapped here for too long. With the remaining coins, it's impossible even to send a symbolic form down there." The bald general grumbled unhappily and while wiping his head, looked behind him. That's where the boring, monotone-colored training hall lied in wait. The 92nd floor scenario location, the Infinite Sanctum. One could only escape from this place after clearing a total of 10 separate trials, and several historical figure-grade constellations, including the bald general of justice, have been trapped in here for many decades. The one-eyed Maitreya complained bitterly. That damn Chiak family fool. What a terrible hardship this is all because of that man. The first one to sniff out this infinite sanctum was the Goryeo's #1 swordsman. If you're a true martial art practitioner, then you simply have to go there. The challenges are very easy, so you could say that place is more like an undiscovered hidden candy. The next person to clear this scenario after Chiak Junjeong, the maritime war god, said this. Indeed, it is quite doable. You'll be accomplishing a great achievement by clearing it. The historical figure-grade constellations that long to reach the level of martial prowess attained by Chiak Junjeong and Yi Sun-shin all headed to the infinite sanctum after hearing those words. And then, this was their sad state after several decades of failure. We've all momentarily forgotten that we are not the same as Chiak Junjeong or Yi Sun-shin. Regardless of where or what, talent would always pose an issue. The bald general spat out one sigh after another. The collision noises of weapons repeatedly rang out from the center of the training hall. Are those idiots still fighting? The one-eyed Maitreya's lone eye shifted over to the location where 2 old men were still duking it out. One was a tiger-like man with massive, rippling muscles, while his opponent was a fox-like man who enjoyed slim yet firm muscles himself. Blinding shower of sparks exploded as 2 swords clashed in the air. Kim Yushin, I'll definitely defeat you today. Jayabik, you're still no match for me. The stage transformation suddenly activated around them, and the Hwangsanbeal's battlefield spread out. It was none other than the very same battlefield Kim Dok-ya had recreated in the past via Gampyeongui. Kim Yushin's fragrant dragon flower unit attacked Jayabik, and the latter also unleashed his grandiose status and crisscrossed the battlefield like a phantom. It was indeed an amazing battle, but the other historical figure-grade constellations simply looked on with bored expression on their faces. The slumbering lady of fine brocade shook her head helplessly, while founder of Hanamgun tutted disapprovingly. The one-eyed Maitreya sneered. Even though they are showing off like that, they know the truth. They know that this is Bial. There should have been a time when they fought earnestly. There was this deep-seated grudge, the resentment that couldn't be resolved even with one's death, after all. These two betted everything of themselves and fought in Bial. Such a thing definitely did happen. Fable, Sun Setting on Bial, is continuing with its storytelling every now and then. The fastest thing to get shaved away after becoming a constellation was their own fable. The more a constellation depleted its story, the weaker its power would get. They would grow bored, disinterested, fall into depression, or lose themselves in tedium. Constellations would desperately seek out other fables in order to escape from such a quagmire. In other words, they would search for a new tragedy to escape from this horrible eternal cycle, even if it was only for a brief moment. Claying. As the sounds of the weapons clashing got faster, COI one stroke of brush spoke. Still, aren't they fighting a bit more spiritedly than before? It seems that the fire's been rekindled after the Demon King of Salvation summoned them back then. What the slumbering lady of fine brocade said caused the constellations to simultaneously shift their eyes over to the scenario channel. There they were, Kim Dak-ya and Yu Young-hyuk crossing the bridge. Han Soo-young had arrived on the other side and was busy shouting out, "Kim Dak-ya, faster!" The noisy clashings of weapons also ceased. Both Kim Yu-shin and Jae-beek stopped recreating Bial before anyone had noticed it and began holding their breaths. One by one, beings gathered around the display panel out of curiosity. Several of them saw the bridge Kim Dak-ya was crossing and pretended to know what it was. Hold on, isn't that the even-numbered bridge? How nostalgic. What rubbish are you spewing now? You weren't even a subscriber back then. HMPH. Odin was chasing after the fleeing Kim Dak-ya and Yu Young-hyuk. The godly spear Gungnir, famed for never missing its target, was now taking aim at the former's back. Not only that, the storm was growing stronger, gradually slowing down the duo's fleeing speed. The one-eyed Maitreya shouted out, "What's this? Odin, that guy is a myth-grade constellation, so what about saving his face?" Dak-ya-gun is also a myth-grade constellation. Are all myth grades the same? Our Kim Dak-ya is a still weak wet behind the ears myth grade. As if to say their fight earlier was a lie, Kim Yu-shin and Jae-beek sat side by side before the screen and shouted at the same time. It seems that the descendant was negligent in his training. He might summon me again through Gampyeongui. I should prepare for. You think he'll call you Jae-beek? Obviously, he'll summon me when in that sort of a situation. When the hint of Bial being recreated showed itself again, the one-eyed Maitreya quickly issued a stern warning. Both of you, shut your traps and just focus on the screen. Anyways, that man isn't going to throw Kim Dak-ya again, I hope. Sparks were dancing around Yu Young-hyuk's right arm as he ran on the bridge. Just as constellations began worrying, he suddenly grabbed Kim Dak-ya by his collars with that arm. I knew it, I bloody knew it. Yu Young-hyuk then powerfully threw Kim Dak-ya forward, but also stepped onto the ladder's back, and they began scything past the storm as if he was surfing the waves. Right next second, the Gungnir thrown by Odin caused a massive explosion along with the blinding wall of light. Quiet. When the light rescinded, only the debris of the destroyed bridge Bifrost remained there. What happened? Did they make it? The screen changed to display Kim Dak-ya's group, safely entering the next cabin. Oh, they made it. As if this event also concerned them too, the Korean Peninsula's constellations looked at each other and celebrated. Even Jae-beek and Kim Yu-shin awkwardly glanced at each other before lightly bumping fists. Unfortunately, their happiness couldn't last for long. Chase after them. Because the Asgard constellations began moving after the enraged Odin issued the order. Kim Dak-ya Company will not be able to escape for long. Everyone here understood this fact. Even if this was Kim Dak-ya they were talking about, he still shouldn't be able to escape for long from the large nebulas in such a disadvantageous stage. Not only that, the channel had been opened publicly again. so other nebulas in the arc should start aiming at Kim Dakya Company as well. As a heavy silence descended on the group, someone muttered out in resignation. I guess it'll be difficult this time. Honestly, that friend should have died a long, long time ago. That prompted several constellations to nod their heads. Kim Dakya's life so far had been a series of miracles. Back when he fell below the Dongho Bridge, back when he destroyed the Absolute Throne, when he became the Demon King of Salvation, or even when he went to the 1863rd turn, he should have died many times over. When he appeared as the Outer God King, every single constellation thought that he'd definitely die for real this time. The incarnation who was stuck in a much lower scenario than them only a few years ago. And now, constellations were watching the back of Kim Dakya striding forward in the scenario way ahead of theirs. Some watched with envious eyes, while some contempted themselves. Everyone wanted to say something, but no one dared to open their mouth. The first one to speak was Jaibik. I once overheard the Shindansu's prophecy in the past. This world line can supposedly become the final world line. No one could predict how far Kim Dakya Company could go. No one knew just where they would end up, or what kind of black square they would witness. Maybe they might not even reach the end of this world like so many had predicted and come to a dead stop. Jaibik grasped his greatsword and slowly got up from the spot. His glare was now locked on the portal in the center of the training hall. That was where the final trial of the infinite sanctum was. Kim Yushin asked him, "Could you perhaps be planning to challenge it? You might really die this time." "If I die, then this place is my black. Jaibik's reply caused Kim Yushin to grin. Our black is H. Wangsenbial. While cracking his neck muscles, Kim Yushin also stood up from his spot. The third person to stand up was the bald general of justice. I shall challenge it again as well. His eyes containing his resolution seemed to shine brightly. That prompted several other constellations to stand up as well. The slumbering lady of fine brocade, founder of Hanamgun, CO, I one stroke of brush, and I hope that you all haven't forgotten that time when we almost got slaughtered while attempting it as a party. The one-eyed Maitreya's words caused everyone's complexion to grow gloomy. They kept failing to break past the last gateway of the scenario until now. However, we can't go and aid them if we don't break through that trial. The thing was, the final pages of the Infinite Sanctum couldn't be cleared with so few participants. It was just that the one-man army Chiak Junjeong and Yi Sun-shin leading an armada were freaks of nature. That was all. If only there were a handful more constellations here. It was then, a bright light exploded in the corner of the sanctum. Someone is entering the Infinite Sanctum's 10th floor. The one-eyed Maitreya's complexion brightened as he shouted out, "Oh, there are newbies incoming." Two beings revealed themselves from the receding light. A short while later, the one-eyed Maitreya's jaw dazedly slackened after realizing who these two were. One was a very big person, while the other was very small. The first one to speak was the smaller figure. "It's just as Chiak Junjeong has said. You all are still stuck here. What a bunch of pathetic fools." Kiajio spat out as vicious fighting spirit oozed out from his body. "My disciple might die because you lot have been meandering about." As the rays of light shattered simultaneously, both Yu Younghyuk and I got sucked into the worldview's exit. When I regained my wits, I found myself being trampled by his feet. "I told you not to throw me." He must have found stepping on my back rather unsanitary, because he began lightly dusting his combat boots. Han Suyong waiting for us quickly approached us. Judging from her expression, she must have been planning to give me another earful. Whether it was a fortunate thing or not, though, Anna Croft opened her mouth first instead. "I had no idea you'd utilize the stage transformation in that manner. Honestly, I'm somewhat impressed, Demon King of Salvation." Han Suyong shifted her glare to Anna next. "Didn't you see all this through your precognition?" "I did see people crossing the bridge, but I had no idea that it'd be that kind of a bridge." "What a complete ripoff you are." I ignored these twos bickering and scanned our new surroundings. The corridors resembling a tree branch's vascular bundle stretched out in all directions. It seemed that this was the corridor of the final arc. I couldn't see the Zarathustras that entered here before us anywhere, though. Anna Croft closed her eyes and felt for something for a bit before opening her mouth. It seems that everyone has scattered in different passageways. Fortunately, no one has lost their lives yet. Our companions seem to be safe too, said Yu Yong-hyuk, and I nodded my head. Influences of other myths will be weaker in the applicable location. Nebula, Kim Dokya Company connection is being established again. Now that we were outside the Asgard worldview, I could start detecting the fables of my companions a little bit. I sensed that they had been scattered here and there. Fable, Demon King of Salvation, is letting its existence known. I strongly omitted my fable in order to gather my companions in one place. If it was them, they should be able to locate me without too much fuss. Boom! Meanwhile, a chain of explosions rocked out from the Asgard exit we closed shut behind us. Some people were trying to open the door and come out. It was obvious who they were. Let's continue moving. Episode 95, Geichin 2 Fin. Chapter 499, Geichin 3. We avoided the Asgard's constellations and ran in the complicated network of the passageways. Constellation, one who lost his arm to the wolf of Apocalypse, is sniffing out the scent of blood. Constellation, god of harp and horns, musical notes are hovering near your ears. Constellation, progenitor of the reincarnators, is tracing your soul. Constellation, master of Abydos, declares that you won't get lucky the second time. While some constellations cheered us on through the channel, there were others chasing us down through the view from the channel too. These stars bared their murderous intentions from beyond the tall walls of their own worldview the moment our location had been revealed. There was a reason why we hadn't been caught yet, and that would be because our group consisted of us four. We should not go to the right. I'm getting a bad premonition from there. We trusted in Anna Croft's hunch and changed our direction. She might be our enemy, but in times like this, she also happened to be the most reliable ally as well. Forks in the road continued to appear. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has begun its storytelling. Odds of death going to the right 92%, 44% to the left, keep going forward. Han Soo-young shouted out while reading through countless clichés in her head. What are the odds of survival when going forward? I don't know. She shot me a glare and ran in front of us. Coming from above. This hunch was coming from none other than the protagonist himself. Yu Yong-hyuk continuously fired off breaking the sky sword aura. Constellations screamed as they were struck by the preemptive attacks and collapsed on the passage's floor. I thought I could hear intermittent noises of breaking the sky swordsmanship, cutting down some things. Continue running. I abruptly realized the reason why the four of us had been gathered like this. These four were most likely to clear this scenario safely. One of us was a prophet, the other one was a writer, and another one was a regressor. As for the last person, stop here. My words caused the companions to stop immediately. All three of them were looking at me. I glanced back at them and slowly approached the cabin before us. Anna Croft grabbed my shoulder. You aren't planning to enter this cabin, I hope. Yu Yong-hyuk didn't say anything. I looked back at my companions and addressed them. Passing through here is the only way. Can't you see what's written on the door of that cabin? No, I could see it very well. And at the same time, I could also very well sense the enormous statuses of the constellations right behind us, too. Olympus. In order to reach the location I want, we must cross Olympus' worldview. According to the fable left behind by Bihyung, we had no choice in the matter. It was rather obvious that Zeus, having tasted humiliation outside, would never let us pass. Odin behind and Zeus in front, said Yu Yong-hyuk as he stepped forward. If we break through here, we'll have a method to fight against them. Yes, definitely. We sensed Odin's status right behind us now. Han Soo-young shouted out, "Damn it, in that case, hurry up and open it. Those bastards are almost here." We kicked the Olympus' door down and jumped in. Felt as if something was powerfully sucking us in, and when I regained my wits, we were busy walking in the skis above Olympus itself. The immense sky castle of Olympus could be seen in the distance. Nebula, Olympus' constellations, have confirmed the identities of the intruders. The atmosphere grew stifling. Thunderclouds gathered in no time at all and covered up the sky. Constellation, Throne of Lightning, is exercising his influence on the entirety of Olympus. Olympus' king was now waiting for us, as well as the 12 gods guarding his sides too. Constellation, Almighty Sun, is mobilizing his chariot. Constellation, Atrocious War God, is lifting his sword. Constellation, Pure Hunter of the Moonlight, is knocking an arrow. Below us on the ocean, we could see the mythical monsters waiting for us too. Constellation, Monster of the Labyrinth, is howling in your direction. Constellation, Fairy that sings about death, is singing about your death. Everything in this world view was our enemy. Kuriru. Move. My Way of the Wind and Yu Jung-hyuk's Airwalk activated simultaneously. Anna Croft's Way of the Storm Winds and Han Soo-young's Dark Cloud's Big Dipper followed us right afterwards. We crossed the sky with the fastest speed we could bring out. Meanwhile, the thunderclouds took on an even more ominous vibe. Demon King of Salvation. The 12 gods stuck very close to our rear. Ares' greatsword sliced the air and descended upon us. I swung my unbreakable faith and blocked the attack just in time. Along with the noise of quaduduk, it felt as if every joint in my body was collapsing. It was like being crushed by a tank, actually. This was the true might of the 12 gods now carrying their own worldview on their backs. I unleashed status from my entire body and spoke in true voice. Do not take us lightly, Ares. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is screeching out. I wasn't sure about anyone else, but at the least, I'd not lose to Ares, because I already possessed a fable of winning against him. Fable, one who defeated the god of war, has begun its storytelling. Unfortunately, our situation had already run into serious problems. The pure hunter of moonlight, Artemis, was pouncing on Han Soo-young wrapped in black flame, while Yu Jung-hyuk flying in the air was already engaged in an intense battle against spokesperson of justice and wisdom, Athena. Anna Croft, situated at the lowest place among us, was beset by Olympus' lower-ranked constellations. I used to cheer you on, Kim Dokya. A voice came from behind me. That was from the fastest constellation in the sky. The motifs of wings could be seen on his shoes. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have come here. It was the master of Skywalk, Hermes. He looked at me with a genuinely rueful expression and spoke. My father, he's been truly angered. And then the thunderclouds glowing brightly until then finally exploded. Everything seemed to enter slow motion. It felt like the view of the sky was melting down slowly. The lightning seemed to blanket the entire world. None living within this world view would be able to dodge Zeus's wrath. Han Soo-young was looking in this direction, shouting something. I silently mouthed the following to her. It's all right. I slowly sucked my breath in and focused my mind. Ares was smiling triumphantly as if the battle had been decided already. I ignored him and raised my sword up high like a lightning rod. Kwaboom! The thunderclap of the sky gathered towards me. This status threatened burst all of my fable veins in one go. However, I endured it. More specifically, the darkness wavering about near the tip of my hand was sucking in Zeus's thunderbolt. An indescribable scream exploded out from my mouth. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is growling. My vision was dyed in red, and fable began flooding out from my mouth. Pachachachachu. Zeus then unleashed an even greater amount of status. I couldn't endure anymore. My powerless body began falling from the air. And now it's done. This is the end, Demon King of Salvation. Even if it's you in our worldview, you are. My helplessly falling body after being struck by the thunderbolt suddenly stopped in the air. The unbreakable faith, almost slipping out of my grasp, was gaining some strength. Next up, Ares's frozen stiff expression could be seen. The expression of the god of war, who'd never submit to fear, was filled with emotions of terror. Someone was holding Kim Dakya's sword together with him. It was a very large and sturdy hand. A true voice akin to the noble knight being carved rang out vividly. Why do you think this worldview is yours alone? The gentle yet deep darkness embraced my falling body. How boundlessly arrogant you are, Ares. The night swallowing up the thunderbolt began spreading in the heavens. Constellation, father of the rich night, is incarnating into the final arc. Constellation, queen of the darkest spring, is incarnating into the final arc. Indeed, Olympus' myths were Zeus alone. The reason why their shining daylight could become myths in the first place was because the night existed to call them the day. Underworld is manifesting onto the ground above. A world sleeping in the deepest part of the underground was now waking up. Hades, the king of underworld, set me down on the ground and spoke calmly towards the sky. It's time to settle this, my ancient brothers. Hades' scythe raised up to the sky screeched out, causing the darkness of the underground to pour out towards the heavens like the waterfall flowing in reverse. It was the underworld's army. When the judges issued the order to advance, the guardian of Tartarus' underbelly, Cerberus, roared out viciously. You lowly creatures from the underground dare to. Heroes of this worldview crossed their swords. More heroes aboard the Argus entered the battlefield next. The great army belonging to Zeus and the 12 gods was truly immense. Judge Aeacus collided against Hephaestus, while Cerberus and Minotaur began ripping into each other. Soldiers from the forest symbolizing Artemis rushed in. The wise astrologer, Chiron's hooves trampled on the underworld's army. No matter how deep your night is. It was then Chiron's head flew off into the sky. Monsters crawling out from the underground used their huge fingers to rip off his head and began chewing on it. Zeus. Voices of unfathomable sorrow and resentment resounded out. I knew their owners pretty well. And so Olympus' final gigantomachia began in this fashion. The Titans, gigants, every single Titan, having spent all those sorrowful years huddled underground, started revealing their figures under Olympus' night. Not only that, monsters boasting physiques several times larger than these gigants rose up as well. They were beings that I ran into some time ago back in the underworld's prison. All Titans of Purgatory are looking up at Olympus' sky. The 3 brothers of Hecatoncheires, the 100-hander Titan Briareus that fought alongside me back in the Gigantomachia, spoke to me. We have finally come this far, child. One of Briareus's hands lightly brushed past my head. This battlefield is for you. The Titans challenging the heavens' authority stood up while stepping on the night. Their roars shook the skis of Olympus, their statuses mighty enough to threaten Zeus's throne. And in the center of this battlefield, Zeus was fighting fiercely against Hades. The collision of these 2 myth-grade constellations caused the pitch-black night and day to intermingle, and the world's time and space collapsed. Persephone, commanding the underworld's army, addressed me directly. Now go, do not ever look back. Go and witness the end you wish to see. I nodded and raised my tottering body up. I swallowed the life and death pill YCLHWA gave me, and all of my fried nerves began recovering bit by bit. I unsteadily walked forward in the battlefield where flesh got torn apart and blood was raining down. Han Soo-young and Yu Young-hyuk, plus Anna Croft, stood there waiting for me, having broken past this scene of pure pandemonium earlier. Han Soo-young ran up to me and supported my figure. I looked behind and saw the corpses of heroes, their eyes still wide open, the stars that fell from the skis, fables that would not be told anymore, were now looking at me with resentful eyes. This was the path I had chosen. I knew this would happen from the beginning. It was obvious that the underworld would make their move if I came here. For the sake of Black Square that I desired, I used all of their fables. Great fable, torch that swallowed the myth, is crying out. We could see the exit of Olympus in the distance. That was where we had to go. However, there was a constellation blocking our path. I had to ask him why. Dionysus, are you going to stop us? The god of wine and ecstasy, Dionysus leading his congregation, was looking straight back at me. He must have downed several bottles of booze already, because his cheeks were quite obviously flushed red. He stared at me with drunken, unfocused eyes, before opening his mouth while gripping the wine bottle. All of you, step aside. The words of the master prompted the Bacchus's fanatic believers to make way, and we walked on that path. The siren's song and Orpheus's musical performance could be heard wafting in from somewhere. Also, I heard the sound of someone I knew dying among them too. Kim Dakya didn't look back. My view shook as if I was intoxicated too. Yet we walked and walked some more. Eventually, we reached Olympus's exit. Dionysus was right behind us. If I look back, I should be able to see his expression filled with sorrow. He was a constellation who really liked our story. Kim Dakya, my Olympus, has no place in the conclusion you're heading to, right? I couldn't reply. That's because I like your story. The one who had been watching my fable for a very long time and rescued me many times in the past. Several constellations, including me, believe that you're the one capable of reaching black. I was about to look back, but Dionysus spoke to me first. It's been fun, oh the great noble star. I heard the sound of a world closing behind me. My feet didn't want to move. I stood there for a long time without saying anything, and eventually someone addressed me. It's not over yet. We began walking towards the darkness of the ark. Our destination was right before us. Episode 95, Heaven Opening 3 Fin. Chapter 500, Gichin 4. After exiting from Olympus, we remained silent for a long while. We either ran or walked. We ran and then ran some more. Only the hollow screams could be heard in the starless emptiness. Would those screams be recorded as fables too? And would someone else listen to them later? Just how many more fables need to repeat themselves before this world came to an end? Kim Dakya. I know. The voice coming from Han Soo-young, still supporting me, helped me to get a grip on myself. Eventually, the doorway to the cabin I was searching for could be seen in the distance. Even this far, the door looked much smaller and shabbier compared to other cabin. The corridor we went past earlier was getting noisier. Constellations from different factions were colliding and making those noises. I didn't hesitate and pushed the door open. You have entered prop storage. What's this shabby? Han Soo-young's utterances came to an immediate stop after she clapped her eyes on the room's interior. The room so big that eyes couldn't see the end of, white sheets covering many places within it. If one were to designate this place as the prop storage, then it'd surely be biggest in the known universe. The cabin where scenario, everything had been gathered. Baehyung's fable could be heard next. All the props that had been used in various scenarios are displayed there, from consumable items to the scenario's main rewards, and even star relics from the nebulas that lost their power. The mucus of the hammer seahorse and the thorn of the stonehawk, I used to hunt the water dragon, were also in here. Back then, I thought I was really going to die, but seeing them like this made me reminisce about my past. Not bad, some of them are still fairly useful. Yu Young-hyuk had strode over to the props even before I had noticed it and began exchanging his equipment. He sprayed the fable metal coating on his dark heavenly demon sword's blade, swapped out his coat with a new one, and even chucked away his ancient combat boots for a new pair before picking up several star relics. Seeing how his eyes were sparkling so dangerously like that, he must be feeling very pleased with himself right now. Wah, still fairly useful. I haven't even seen some of these before. Let's quickly grab some and bounce. Han Soo-young too had dived into the piles of items by then and hurriedly picked the stuff she could use. Even Anna Croft, lucky enough to be supported by a wealthy nebula until recently, bent down and carefully went through the items on display. Like a group of unremarkable incarnations that stumbled onto the scenario's hidden piece, we sought out items, exchanged our equipment, and shared happy grins with one another. They all knew, however, if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be able to endure this moment. Yet another noise of explosions rang outside the room. It sounded much closer than before. So, what's in the next room then? Was it because of fatigue? Han Soo-young had stopped predictive plagiarism's story for now. Our gazes met, and for a moment there, she raised the corner of her brow slightly. You think writers enjoy writing stories all the time. I could understand the meaning behind her grin now. Even if the world was destroyed, even if the scenario barreled towards tragedy, she'd remain as a writer always. And that was why it was so much more painful for her. All those different pains yet to be described must still be inside her head even now. And that was why only him, the reader, could make this choice. No, we'll make our stand right here. A choice that only the one filled with greed and obstinacy to see the desired ending could make. Han Soo-young erupted in anger. We weren't going to destroy the core. If we are to reach the core, we need to go through other worldviews of large nebulas. Can't we just go around or something, like if we exit through that door? Han Soo-young pointed to a plain door visible in the corner of the room. That door will take us to Emperor. What about that one? That door is connected to Vedas. Son of a... Han Soo-young freaked out, and as she distanced herself from the door, she made sure to place the locks on them. The explosion noise rang out once more. Heavy vibrations resounded out, and someone began pounding on the cabin's door. Along with the sounds of some things exploding, the cabin's walls shook about violently. They are right before us, it seems, said Anna Croft. Han Soo-young scowled deeply and began massaging her forehead. Fable, predictive plagiarism, has resumed its storytelling. In the end, she had to reactivate her fable. Plot developments she didn't want to predict were probably being drawn inside her head. Both Anna Croft possessing precognition, and Yu Young-hyuk and his ability to read the patterns after living through countless regressions, began getting ready to fight as well. We need to fight in this place. This is the only room where we have any hope of victory. Every cabin within the final arc contained the recreation of large nebula's worldview. However, there was one location in this arc where no worldview had been recreated. And that was none other than this prop storage, where items to be used in various scenarios were stored away. Applicable cabin isn't under the influence of any worldview. That was the reason why I chose this room as our battleground. They are here. The moment Yu Young-hyuk unsheathed the dark heavenly demon sword, the doors in all four sides burst open simultaneously. Constellations began flooding in through the doorways next. Constellation, master of December 25th, is incarnating into the arc. Constellation, one responsible for the universe's rotation, is joining the battleground along with its servants. Vedas. Constellation, master of Abydos, is incarnating in rage. Constellation, official in charge of earthquakes and volcanoes, is waking up from its ancient slumber. Constellation, ruler of inhalation and exhalation, is waking up its fables. Papyrus. Constellation, one-eyed father, is fixing his grip on his spear. Constellation, one who lost his arm to the wolf of apocalypse, has discovered you. Asgard. Constellation, great mother god who created man out of earth, is incarnating into the ark. Constellation, Darashingen, is incarnating into the ark. Constellation, Emperor of Heavens, is sitting on his throne. Constellation, master of the three-pointed double-edged spear, is taking out all of his palpes. And even Emperor too. The moment all the doors of the storage broke down, fables within the space collided and expanded. The great fables from differing worldviews were letting their voices heard loud and clear. Han Soo-young chuckled. Everyone who hates us has gathered in one spot. Over there. Just as someone shouted that out, We quickly retreated to the back. Along with a loud explosion, jet black ash danced in the spot we'd been standing on a moment ago. Great Fables have discovered a new cabin. Portion of Fables have begun transplanting their worldviews to the new cabin. We didn't have much time here. Kwaboom! Explosions rang out as we unsheathed our individual weapons. I too had already kitted myself out from head to toe in all sorts of props from various scenarios. With our backs pressed against each other, we faced the 4 cardinal directions and unleashed our statuses towards the incoming constellations. Han Soo-young fired out black flame and flung herself forward. All of you just die. A pitch-black sphere she threw flew in the air and landed amidst the constellations. I wondered what that was, only for a stonking flame wave to explode out from the item. Qaya. I instantly recognized what that was. That was the 95th scenario's reward item called Nightmare Flame Wave, from the 241st regression turn. It was a horrifying fable weapon containing flames dragged out from Eden's hell that unleashed perpetual flames in the area of effect for the next 10 or so years. Measly flames from a destroyed nebula dares to. Along with foo noise, Nuwa's soil created a path in the middle of the conflagration. The Emperor-S constellations ran on that road and pounced on us. Some of them happened to be the same lot that fought against us back during the journey to the west. Han Soo-young noisily gritted her teeth. They managed to show up here, yet why haven't you come yet, Black Flame Dragon? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, shouts out that you must wait for a little bit longer. The number of constellations entering through the doors easily surpassed a couple of hundreds, 300, 4, 5. Every constellation found in the world views were now streaming into this huge room. And as their numbers continued to grow, the effects of the stage transformation grew stronger in the middle of them. The once colorless floor morphed into the desolate desert, and a massive pyramid suddenly rose up from there. The master of Abydos, Osiris, spoke up. I was wondering who managed to wake me up but this. Right afterwards, clouds gathered in the sky above, and the panoramic view of the heavenly world spread out. The great mother god who created man out of earth, Nuwa, spoke to us next. It's not too late, children. I can make spots available for you all. On whose authority? I thought I could hear the trumpeting of elephants, only to realize that it was the master of December 25th, Mithra, riding atop the head of a gigantic turtle, speaking up. Only punishment fitting for those rejecting the celebration day for my revival is death. Odin, sitting on the edge of the universe tree's branch, stared at me, with the eye capable of seeing through all things in creation. Oh, you foolish star, did you honestly believe you can fight against us all? A loud burst of laughter could be heard. All the stars, their great fables already secured within this safe ark, were laughing at us. With a fable that hasn't even reached myth level yet, how dare you? The bird that devours thunder tried to throw some third-rate utterances in our direction, but then its mouth suddenly emitted pushushuk noise before being cleanly penetrated from behind. Yu Younghyuk had somehow appeared behind the creature's back and cut the fool's head off right there and then. You talk too much. Kill them. The battle commenced. We were overwhelmingly outnumbered, but we aggressively utilized the nearby props to their fullest in our fight. Fable weapons we could rely on were scattered about all over the place, especially for the weapon storage for the 60th scenario, which seemed to be designed solely with Yu Younghyuk in mind. Comrade of Life and Death has begun its storytelling. Comrade Hellscape of Eternity has begun its storytelling. Yu Younghyuk's talents displayed earlier during the Demon King selection, battles were now shining brightly. He was the all-rounder. He mastered handling every type of weapons out there while living through 1863 regression turns, and now he was massacring constellations with a great bow. Kill him first. Historical figure-grade constellations were sniped to death by Yu Younghyuk's rapid firing, and the debris falling from the dying stars created protective walls. We ran between them and continued to fight. Dodge to the right. Almost at the same time as Anna's warning rang out, a rapid attack from the myth-grade constellation swept by near our heels. Avoiding fatal injuries after getting struck by such attacks would be quite difficult. The stock of Yi Xiaochua's life and death pills had almost run out by now, so we weren't able to deal with serious wounds anymore. Lower-ranked constellations of Asgard pounced on Anna Croft. "How dare you betray our nebula?" Splat! The head of the constellation roaring out exploded, just like that. A lengthy tongue-like thing flew out from behind Anna Croft and burst open that constellation's head. Constellation who likes changing gender is smirking. The backer that helped her betray the nebula was now helping us, too. Kim Dak-ya, holding out any further will be impossible. Yu Young-hyuk reached his limit, too. The attentions of the myth-grade constellations were focused on Yu Young-hyuk. The weapon storage was burning in flames, while he was swinging a huge hammer around to ward off the constellations, his whole body bathed in blood. Kim Dak-ya began rummaging through the prop storage to find something. Found it. I picked up a test tube located at the very end of the star relic category. This was written on the label stuck to the tube, Shindansu seed. I unhesitantly dropped that seed on the floor. It quickly sprouted a new bud and in a blink of an eye grew into a tree as tall as me. But it stopped there. Great Fable Shindansu is spreading its roots. Great Fable Shindansu is perceiving your existence. Great Fable Shindansu requires a fable for the sake of Gichin, Chinese letter. The whole prop storage was now up in flames. Yu Young-hyuk was holding up pretty well until now. Constellations looking into his venomous eyes freaked out and yelled at each other. This is the prop storage. Use items to fight him off. The first thing they found was an item we were quite familiar with as well, the Absolute Throne. The core item of the fourth scenario that granted anyone acquiring it with the outer god's blessing. The historical figure-grade constellations discovering the throne rushed towards it with greed-filled eyes. I stopped Han Soo-young from rushing there too. Let them be. The historical figure-grade constellations swarmed towards it. The throne is mine. The moment someone stepped on the absolute throne, I clutched the Shindansu-S leaf. No matter how hard I pondered it, the fable that I could afford to feed this guy had to be this one. A portion of constellations felt something was off and hurriedly shouted at the absolute throne. Wait, stop. Just as the status leaking out from the absolute throne was about to flood in this direction, something buried deep inside my chest began to writhe. Fable, King of a Kingless World, has begun its storytelling. Great Fable, Shindansu, has detected the beginning of a new fable. This story began by destroying that throne. Quack-quack-quack-quack. The Shindansu gobbled up the fable and acquired the explosive amount of probability, allowing it to grow larger again. A new worldview is taking root in the applicable location. Shindansu, the large nebula Hangik-S Great Fable. I address the constellations. As you have said, we don't have a myth. However, we have always been fighting together with a certain myth. And that fable began telling its story. No other myths could escape from this story. The Shindansu instantly reached up to the storage's ceiling and massive explosion noises resounded out next. The arc ceiling began collapsing. Gichin, Chinese letter, is commencing. The heavens started opening up as powerful whirlwinds swirled around. Aged stars of an ancient nebula are waking up from their endless slumber. Accompanied by the blinding rays of light, shadows of tree branches in full bloom were cast on the torn sky. Stars began appearing on the ends of the shadows like ripened fruits. That throne, it's been a while. 7 stars were now dangling on the ends of the branches. Constellations of the Big Dipper that aided me with destroying the absolute throne were there. Countless constellations began descending from the sky like shooting stars. Constellation, Bald General of Justice, is incarnating into the Ark. Constellation, King Humo, is incarnating into the Ark. Constellation, Slumbering Lady of Fine Brocade, is incarnating into the Ark. Constellation, heaven's wind god, is incarnating into the ark. Only these stars were willing to become our allies in this ark. A sword crashed down like lightning among the descending constellations, and the absolute throne exploded into bits. The constellation trampling on the false king above the wrecked throne looked at me and spoke. Good work, descendant. Constellation, Goryeo's first sword, is incarnating into the ark. Episode 95, Gichin 4 Fin.